Chapter 496. The angry fire burned the sky, and the ferocious birds danced in the air. All the traces of the Tao of Fire were derived. The Tao of Fire was natural and violent. Lin soon ran the 9 strikes for shaking heaven to fight fiercely. His whole body was covered with light cyan divine light, and his handsome figure was unshakable, flashing between the heaven and the earth. In just a moment, the sea of fire collapsed, the ferocious birds were shattered, and everything turned into a rain of fire, drifting between heaven and earth. The air was full of the breath of the Tao of Fire. Lin soon stopped to meditate, but soon he frowned. The Tao of Fire was clearly in front of him, but it was unrestrained and untraceable. In the end, the Tao of Fire disappeared, and all the illusions were silent. It seems that it is really difficult to comprehend and master the power of the Tao without the opportunity to break through the Tao insight realm. Lin Sun frowned. Immediately, he was surprised to find that there was a figure standing on the side of the path in front of him. The figure was Gu Yunting. Did he also come to climb the ladder to heaven? Lin soon noticed that this person had set foot on the second stone step at this time. Obviously, although he followed Lin Sun, he had caught up. "Do you want to compete with me?" Lin Sun shook his head. He didn't have such a competitive mind. It was not that he was afraid, but he didn't want to be distracted by such things. After truly experiencing the mystery of the celestial ladder, Lin Sun suddenly had a strong ambition in his heart. He wanted to try to comprehend and master the power of a conception in sea spirit realm. A long time ago, when he performed the Tianyuan saber play, he displayed a kind of momentum of heaven and earth with the Tao of reaching for the stars and the moon fetching style, which contained the breath of the Tao. But it was the power integrated into the saber play. Although it could be controlled, the Tao of heaven didn't belong to Lin Sun. It was just a kind of control of power. Now, the ladder to heaven was densely covered with traces of the Tao, which could derive the real essence of the Tao. Lin Sun naturally didn't want to miss such a rare opportunity. If he rushed to ascend the stairway to heaven merely for the sake of competing with Gu Yunting, then he would undoubtedly miss this fortuitous encounter. Without hesitation, Lin Sun continued to step on the second stone step. Suddenly, another illusion of the Tao of heaven appeared. This was a world of green wood. Verdant trees towered into the sky, branches and leaves covered the void, steaming with incomparable vitality. Concept of wood. Wood represented life, and it was endless. It was a type of intent of the 5 elements, and it was profound and unfathomable. According to rumor, some great cultivators at the heavenly abode realm that grasped wood intent were able to possess boundless combat strength that grew and multiplied endlessly, causing them to be like an immortal body that was extremely formidable. Moreover, they could communicate with the essence of plants and absorb the vitality of the world. They were the closest to nature, so it was easier for them to cultivate compared to other cultivators. Rumble, suddenly, vines as thick as buckets rushed out of the earth like dancing pythons, covering the sky and suppressing Lin Sun. Whoosh! The seemingly soft vine leaves could easily tear through the void and were filled with terrifying penetrative power. Lin Sun executed the ice drake step. His figure was illusory as he shuttled back and forth. His fist force was like a huge dragon, shattering the heavens and shattering the earth. It charged in all directions and smashed all the vines into pieces, causing debris to fly in all directions. To everyone's surprise, the shattered vines healed as soon as they fell to the ground, and then they shot into the sky once more. This was the intent of wood. It grew and multiplied endlessly. Unless one could suppress it with absolute strength, it couldn't be killed at all. After 15 minutes, Lin Sun completely smashed the intent of wood with the superimposed 3-fold fist force and turned it into a colorful rain of light. He held his breath, cut off the distractions in his mind, and meditated quietly. It was a pity that he clearly felt that he could grasp the essence of the domain of wood, but he always missed it. It was like there was a world between him and it. He could only see it, but he couldn't comprehend it. But Lin Sun was not discouraged. Since ancient times, very few people could control the power of the intent of Great Way in Sea Spirit Realm. Even if there were, most of them were like legends that couldn't be proved true. It could be seen that it was not only difficult to achieve this step in Sea Spirit Realm, but also almost hopeless. It was like a barrier in a realm. Without the qualification of Heavenly Abode Realm, it was difficult to break this barrier in comprehending the Great Way. To put it simply, this was a hopeless road. Many amazing cultivators had tried it in the past, but they all failed in the end. Lin Sun didn't know this, so he naturally didn't have a deep understanding of it. Perhaps his action at this time was really because the ignorant were fearless. However, this was cultivation. Only by seeking and exploring could one verify one's Great Way. In front of the ladder mountain, the beast meat in the iron pot was completely eaten up. The sloppy old man smacked his lips with satisfaction. He lay lazily on the bluestone in front of the hut, squinting at the distance with indescribable satisfaction. "Junior brother, what do you think of those two little guys?" Suddenly, a weathered voice sounded. A skinny old man had come to the front of the hut with his hands behind his back, staring at the ladder mountain in the distance. If Lin Sun was here, he would definitely recognize that the skinny old man was the dean of Green Deer School. "Hey, even you are alarmed. Do you still need to ask me?" The sloppy old man took out a toothpick to pick his teeth. It seemed that he was not surprised that the dean would come in person. "I want to know your opinion," the dean asked. "That boy in the white robe should be the guy who rushed into the Sea Spirit General List yesterday. If I'm right, he is here to break through the realm and is likely to succeed." The sloppy old man's voice was lazy, as if he was talking about something very casual. "Such a young man will enter the ancient desolation realm to cultivate sooner or later." "What about the other one?" The dean looked indifferent and was not surprised, because he knew Gu Yunting's current potential better than the sloppy old man. "Well, I don't see anything mysterious." The sloppy old man's answer was very perfunctory. He seemed to be too lazy to pay attention to it. "Look again," the dean said, seeming to care about the sloppy old man's opinion. The sloppy old man was a little surprised. He glanced at the dean and said, "Is there anything special about this boy?" He originally had the opportunity to leave his name on the Sea Spirit General List, but in the end, he refused this opportunity. "In the thousands of years since I brought the ancient tablet of Tao Spirit to the school, such a thing has never happened," the dean said casually. "What?" With a whoosh, the sloppy old man sat up straight, and a trace of surprise appeared on his lazy face. "You mean, this boy has the power that the heavens pivot holy ground desperately wants?" He obviously knew some secret. The dean nodded. "That's right, the power that can repel and isolate the ancient tablet of Tao Spirit is what the heavens pivot holy ground desires the most. I only heard that this power was brought into the Xiao Empire from the ancient desolation realm many years ago, but I never thought that it might be true." The slovenly old man's expression changed indeterminately. After a short while, he suddenly laughed and said, "In that case, do you intend to give this kid to the Heavens Pivot Sacred Grounds, or do you intend to make a move yourself and take that power from this kid for yourself?" That smile actually seemed a little sinister and horrifying. The dean said indifferently, "If it was in the past, I might do that, but now, I just want to watch from the sidelines and avoid this karma." The sloppy old man sneered, "Are you willing? Have you forgotten who forced you out of the ancient desolation realm?" The dean's expression remained unchanged, and he said, "It was I who proposed the matter back then. Otherwise, do you think I have no chance to return in these thousands of years?" The sloppy old man still didn't believe it, and he sneered, "I don't believe it. You must have other plans." The dean frowned and sighed after a while. "You don't understand. I was defeated back then, and I was convinced of my defeat. I can't blame anyone. But you're not willing. Otherwise, why would you care so much about this boy today?" The sloppy old man said word by word. As he spoke, He looked at the sky ladder mountain in the distance. He could clearly see that Lin Sun's figure was walking up one stone step after another in a slow manner. On the other side, Gu Yunting was striding as if he was flying, and he was as light as an immortal. He had already arrived halfway up the mountain, far surpassing Lin Sun. If you plan to cultivate this boy and take back what you lost, then you'll be disappointed. Because I really don't see what's worth paying attention to this little guy. This time, the dean fell into silence and said after a long time, I have no such plan. This little guy has too many causes and effects. Do you still remember Lin Wenjing and Luo Qingxuan? The sloppy old man narrowed his eyes. The first and second place of the nation test 17 years ago? The dean nodded. Lin Wenjing's grandfather was Lin Daochen, a life-death realm king. He died on the frontier battlefield, but how he died has always been a mystery. And Luo Qingxuan is also not simple. It is said that she was born in a humble and poor family. Her parents died early, and she had no relatives or friends. But her talent is amazing and unparalleled. Moreover, she is intelligent and outstanding. At that time, you also said that it was not normal. The sloppy old man seemed to be lost in memory, and nodded after a long time. I have a deep impression of Luo Qingxuan. Judging from her aura, she can't be cultivated by the poor. Speaking of this, he couldn't help frowning, but they all died more than 10 years ago. Why do you still mention these things? The dean said indifferently, Lin Sun is their child. The sloppy old man was stunned, and a strange look appeared on his face. It turned out to be this little guy. When he was born, he was accompanied by the devouring abyss spiritual vein, which shocked the whole forbidden city. But I never thought that he could still live until now after the devouring abyss spiritual vein was dug out. If Yun Qingbai of the heaven-reaching sword sect knew about it, there would be a good show. The dean said indifferently, someone saved him at that time. The sloppy old man frowned. Who dares to save people in the hands of Yun Qingbai? Lu Boya, the dean said a name. It's him. The sloppy old man was shocked. He suddenly stood up and looked surprised. The origin of this old guy is very mysterious. The dean nodded. In this way, Lin Sun has a lot of troubles. The death of his great-grandfather and parents are all involved in some terrible causes and effects, and he has a relationship with Lu Boya. It's really complicated. The sloppy old man was lost in thought. So, I can't entrust him with the things of that year. Chapter 497. The stairway to heaven had a total of 99 steps. It contained the number of the Great Way, and it was branded with the traces of the Great Way. Walking on it, every step was filled with killing intent. Dong. The golden blades poured down from the sky, dazzling and tearing the heaven and the earth. But in just a moment, they were all smashed by a pair of fists and turned into a rain of light. Lin Sun meditated and finally sighed. Difficult, difficult, difficult. The Great Way was mysterious and unfathomable, almost impossible to comprehend and control. The 39th step forced me to use 5 layers of fist energy. I'm afraid the higher I go, the more difficult it will be to climb, Lin Sun thought for a while. He glanced and saw a flash of white clothes at a very high position. It was quite eye-catching, like a flying immortal. Gu Yunting had reached the 80th step. Lin Sun was stunned, then he withdrew his gaze and concentrated on the path under his feet. As time went by, he climbed up step by step, broke through layers of Great Way illusions, and saw various different Great Way concepts. There were traces of blazing and wanton fire, traces of endless vitality of wood, sharp and unparalleled Golden Way concept, and every kind of Great Way concept represented a kind of aura, blending between heaven and earth, filling the space between the earth and the sky, and it was indescribably wonderful. The changing of the 4 seasons, the changing of life and death, the rising and falling of the sun and the setting of the moon, the alternation of day and night, the rise and fall of the tide. All things had spirit. Spirits were the basis of law, and law was the rhythm of Tao. Tao was nameless and derived from all things. It went round and in order, deducing all things. In short, it was called the Great Way of Heaven, but it was easy to know and difficult to do. Seeing and knowing were one thing, and trying to comprehend and control were another. The two were like the difference between heaven and earth, completely different. Just like now, Lin Sun had been trying to comprehend and control it, and he had used all means, but so far he had gained nothing. This was still on the stairway to heaven, which was full of traces of Great Way. If it was in the outside world, the Great Way was illusory, and it would only be more difficult to perceive and find. This was also the reason why the strong of Tao insight realm seemed so rare. The road of Great Way was vague and boundless. Since ancient times, no one knew how many practitioners had stopped here and died with regret. The so-called Great Way buried all corpses. This was absolutely not an exaggeration. It was like a natural barrier that trapped most of the cultivators in the world, and they were unable to climb and surmount it. On the other hand, there was a limit to one's lifespan. If one was unable to break through, then one would naturally be unable to escape the pain of aging, sickness, and death. In the end, one would transform into a pile of dirt and sink into the annals of time. Boom! The surging ocean surged, condensing into spears, halberds, spirit swords, blades, and other different forms. Water glistened as it charged through the air. Lin Sun moved like lightning, using ice dragon steps, fighting fiercely above the sea. His fists were dazzling, tearing the void apart. Rumble, there were explosions everywhere, a rain of light shot out and waves swept across. It wasn't long before the surging concept of water transformed into WRMS, ferocious birds, yakshas, sea spirits, and various other terrifying living beings, and their might grew even more terrifying. This was the 63rd step of the heavenly stairway. The energy of the traces of the Grand Tao was becoming more and more terrifying, and the concept energy it developed had obviously become different as well. It possessed a copious and irresistible spirituality that was terrifying to the extreme. If it was any other sea spirit realm practitioner, his body would probably be obliterated in an instant. In fact, it was true. For thousands of years, there had been many geniuses in Green Deer School who came here to challenge the heavenly stairway, but those who could set foot here could be counted on one's fingers. The reason was that the power of the traces of the Grand Tao was like the momentum of heaven and earth, which was not something that a sea spirit realm practitioner could bear at all. At this moment, even Lin Sun felt the pressure, and he dared not take it lightly. The light cyan glow lingered around his body, like an ice dragon, swallowing clouds and spitting out mist, overturning rivers and seas. After a moment, the concept of water transformed into a heavy explosion, and a rain of light fell. It's the 63rd step. I've used the fifth fist force, and nearly half of my physical strength has been consumed. Lin Sun silently perceived and analyzed his own situation. If it was just a simple challenge, Lin Sun would have already ascended, and it would be impossible to consume a lot of time and physical strength. The key was that while he was challenging the heavenly stairway, he wanted to perceive and control the power of the Grand Tao, which naturally consumed more energy and time than usual. If the other cultivators in the academy were to find out about this, they would probably take Lin Sun to be a freak. After all, even ascending the heavenly stairway was extremely difficult for them, yet Lin Sun instead took challenging the heavenly stairway as an opportunity to explore and try to grasp Grand Tao concept. This seemed to be too abnormal, and it was embarrassing. Suddenly, when Lin Sun was perceiving with concentration, he suddenly captured a trace of vague, mysterious breath in his heart. It was as misty as a cloud, but full of the charm of water. He comprehended it. Lin Sun was excited and overjoyed, but when he wanted to comprehend it carefully, this trace of vague, mysterious trace disappeared again. It was like a swan claw in the snow mud, traceless. But Lin Sun was not depressed. On the contrary, His black eyes became extremely bright, and his heart was surging with excitement like a raging river. The perception just now, like a light breaking the darkness, let Lin soon see a glimmer of hope on the way to the grand Tao that he had been searching for so long. Perhaps in the past years, there were countless examples to prove that in the sea spirit realm, the grand Tao was unpredictable and there was no way to find it. But what happened just now undoubtedly told Lin Sun that it was possible to comprehend and control the power of the grand Tao in the sea spirit realm, and the barrier between the Tao insight realm and the sea spirit realm was not unbreakable. The concept of water. Lin Sun took a deep breath and recovered his calmness. All the way up the stairs, he saw many different traces of the grand Tao, but until now, only the trace of the concept of water could be perceived. Although it was only a trace and extremely uncertain, it pointed out a way for Lin Sun and made him clear the direction to seek for the grand Tao. Without hesitation, Lin Sun continued to climb. This time, he no longer spent energy on other traces of the grand Tao and began to seize the time to break through. Only when he encountered the steps with traces of water, he chose to stay, and he did not hesitate to restrain his strength and breath to prolong the time of the expedition in order to further comprehend and control the concept of water. For a moment, Lin Sun's figure was like a rainbow, walking on the stone steps as if he was flying, and his speed was more than twice as fast as before. On the 91st stone step, Gu Yunting had just broken a terrible illusion and was taking the time to adjust his breath. After arriving here, he also felt strenuous, and his physical consumption accelerated, so he had to take a rest. Suddenly, Gu Yunting seemed to notice something, and his eyes suddenly looked down. He saw that Lin Sun had set foot on the 77th stone step, which made him frown. He still remembered that Lin Sun was far behind before, but in less than 10 minutes, Lin Sun had greatly shortened the distance between them, which seemed a little unusual. Did Lin Sun have been holding back his strength, and intended to break out at this time to catch up with him all the way? Gu Yunting withdrew his gaze, and his handsome face was as calm as an ancient well. When he climbed the mountain before, he did have the idea of competing with Lin Sun, because yesterday he also noticed that Lin Sun caused a magnificent phenomenon of heaven and earth when he broke through the golden list of spiritual sea. This made him feel a trace of surprise in his heart, so when he saw Lin Sun today, he also wanted to take this opportunity to test Lin Sun's ability. But he was soon disappointed. Lin Sun's performance was very mediocre, not as strong as he imagined at all. Originally, Gu Yunting had already begun to ignore Lin Sun, but who would have thought that Lin Sun would start to break out at this time? This also made Gu Yunting doubt whether Lin Sun wanted to use this kind of strategy to compete with him. In the face of absolute strength, strategy is after all a small way. Only exerting strength at this time is already doomed to be difficult to reverse the situation. Gu Yunting didn't think any more, and continued to walk on his stone steps. In his heart, Lin Sun might be called amazing, but he couldn't make him have the idea of competing at all. Hey, that little guy is starting to exert strength. In front of the cottage, the sloppy old man said in surprise. I said long ago, he is not worse than Gu Yunting. The dean spoke indifferently. He witnessed Lin Sun's performance on the Sea Spirit list with his own eyes yesterday, and even though he didn't leave his name in the end, Lin Sun's results at that time were even higher than Gu Yunting's. If that's the case, then this kid is extremely extraordinary, and he can be called a little monster in the ancient desolation realm. A wisp of light shot out from the sloppy old man's eyes, and it seemed as if the sun and moon were reflected within them, and they deduced the phenomenon of the great Tao that was incomparably terrifying. Senior brother, since you don't intend to interfere in this kid's matter, why don't you hand him over to me? The sloppy old man asked. No. The dean refused flatly. The sloppy old man smiled disapprovingly. Before long, the dean and the sloppy old man seemed to have sensed something, and they suddenly raised their heads and looked towards the peak of Tiendi Mountain in unison. On the 99th level, Gu Yunting's white clothes and black hair fluttered in the wind, and a myriad of dazzling crimson flames gushed out from his body like a divine ring of flames that enveloped his entire body and suffused with a miraculous aura. Rumble! No one knew when a dark cloud had emerged in the sky, and the sound of thunder resounded and surged between heaven and earth. In just an instant, bolts of lightning fell from the clouds, and it seemed like a twisting thunder snake that drowned Gu Yunting. He has broken through the realm. The golden body of Tao fire is indeed a famous talent in ancient times. When he was advancing, he actually caused the heavenly thunder tribulation. It's rare to see one in tens of thousands of practitioners. The sloppy old man's eyes were clear, and they emitted a divine light. This is the foundation of a real talent. Crossing the heavenly thunder tribulation and refining the Tao body, this kind of supreme opportunity is something that other practitioners can't have. The dean couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Both of them knew that as long as Gu Yunting crossed the heavenly thunder tribulation, he could become a peerless practitioner of Tao Insight realm. However, both of them didn't notice that at the same time that Gu Yunting was overcoming the tribulation and advancing, Lin Sun, who'd stepped foot on the 88th step, was silently enshrouded in circles of ripples that were like water, and they suffused through the pores of his body. Chapter 498. He finally succeeded. Lin Sun stood there, motionless, like a pine tree rooted on the cliff bank. In his sea of consciousness, a faintly discernible blue luster flickered. As it swept past the soul stars, the originally silver soul stars were instantly dyed with a beautiful layer of aqua light, azure and translucent. But it didn't take long for them to return to their original color. It was as if the blue luster was igniting the star lamp, but when the blue luster left, the lamp would also be extinguished. One bright and one dim, just like breathing, was extremely wonderful. This was the power of the conception of water. Even if it was merely a strand, it was still extraordinary and possessed unfathomable profundities. It was the embodiment of the Tao. At this moment, Lin Sun could clearly perceive that there was a kind of Tao belonging to water in his soul, which made him perceive a kind of power belonging to Tao. The best was like water. The big one was majestic, like a waterfall flowing straight down, destroying mountains and cracking the earth. The small one was like dripping water piercing through a stone, and the small one could see the general trend and moisten things imperceptibly. When it was soft, it was like the spring breeze and rain, and when it was hard, it was like the raging sea hitting the sky. As the saying goes, big and small have no fixed potential, and the combination of hardness and softness elaborates the mystery of heaven and earth. At this moment, Lin Sun finally realized the power of the conception, which was a profound understanding of the power of heaven and earth. If he could control it, he could exert incredible and terrifying power. Although it is only a wisp of Tao, it is a new understanding of Tao for me. In the future, as long as I practice and comprehend it, I can control the power of water and integrate it into my cultivation. Lin Sun took a deep breath and suddenly opened his eyes. At this moment, the aura in his entire body seemed to have undergone a change, and it possessed an otherworldly and transcendent aura that was clear like water. If the dean of Green Deer School and the sloppy old man knew that Lin Sun, with the cultivation of sea spirit realm, had comprehended and mastered a wisp of the power of the conception of water, they would not be able to keep calm. Unfortunately, the minds of the two of them had always been locked onto Gu Yunting at this moment and were attracted by the phenomenon of the tribulation lightning he caused. Thus, they'd never noticed that the youth not far away from Gu Yunting had broken the publicly acknowledged convention of the world. He had done something that many outstanding talents in the past and present had never done, and if this was known by other practitioners in the outside world, it would be enough to cause a subversive uproar and shake the world of cultivation. At this time, Lin Sun also noticed that Gu Yunting was currently crossing a tribulation, drawing lightning from all directions to temper himself and break through. A halo that was condensed from divine flames illuminated Gu Yunting's surroundings, causing his entire body to be bathed in multicolored light. He raised his head to resist the lightning, simply like a god, his might unparalleled. This fellow is truly amazing. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel awestruck. He had been to the ancient spirit world and had seen many amazing talents, such as Bai Lingshi, Song Yi Qi Tsangfeng, Marquis Lingtian, and so on. But almost none of them could compare with Gu Yunting. Perhaps only young Sword King Shai Yutong and other heavenly talents of the older generation could compete with him. A Tao Insight Realm cultivator in his 20s, with a golden body of Tao fire. If this guy enters the ancient desolation realm in the future, he will definitely stand out. Lin Sun was lost in thought. He couldn't go forward at this time, because the heavenly thunder tribulation was surging and terrifying. Once he got close to it, he was bound to be affected. However, taking advantage of this opportunity, Lin Sun saw the heavenly thunder tribulation for the first time, which was really rare. Generally speaking, if one didn't have a heaven-defying foundation, he couldn't trigger the heavenly thunder tribulation at all. At least as far as Lin Sun knew, 90% of the Tao Insight Realm cultivators in the world today had never experienced such a thing when they broke through. From this, it could be seen how stunning Gu Yunting was. Thunder tribulation. It is said that in ancient times, only the practitioners who walked out of the heavenly thunder tribulation could be called the real strong. I don't know whether it is true or not. Lin Sun calmly felt the destructive breath in the heavenly thunder tribulation, and his thoughts were flying. After a while, the thunder clouds dissipated and the sky became clear again. Gu Yunting sat cross-legged on the 99th stone step, bathed in flames and lightning, meditating quietly. He had just passed the tribulation and needed to temper and stabilize his cultivation. His breath had obviously become different. There seemed to be a real dragon dormant in his body, which could frighten the world and disdain the world. Lin Sun stared silently for a moment, then withdrew his eyes and walked to the next step. Having comprehended a wisp of the essence of water, he was satisfied and began to devote all his energy and strength to breaking through. It's a pity that a young man like Gu Yunting is destined not to stay in Xiao Empire. Only in the ancient desolation realm can he shine. The slovenly old man sighed lightly. He was amazed by Gu Yunting's performance today. In a world like the ancient desolation where geniuses came forth in large numbers and heroes were dazzling, perhaps it couldn't be said to be rare, but in the Xiao Empire, it could be said to be rare and second to none. I only hope that his future will not be hindered by the heavens pivot Holy Land. The dean said indifferently. The sloppy old man was in a daze and suddenly laughed. It seems that you are still not reconciled to what happened in those days. The dean didn't comment. Tell me, how are you going to deal with Lin Sun? The sloppy old man's expression became serious. Although he has a lot of karma, he is a rare good material. Are you going to let him run his own course? The dean was silent for a moment and then said, A hidden dragon in the abyss must suffer many hardships before he can soar to the sky. For now, I don't intend to intervene. Tempering? The sloppy old man sneered. I'm afraid that he will have too many troubles and die prematurely. The dean's eyes moved slightly, but he didn't say anything more. Rush. On the stairway mountain, the higher it was, the more terrible the power imprinted on the stone steps was. Lin Sun had to use all his strength to fight against it. The 91st, the 92nd, the 93rd. When he reached the 99th step, Lin Sun was also soaked in cold sweat. His breath was heavy, and his face was slightly pale. His physical consumption was so great that he almost couldn't bear it. Fortunately, all that was left was a flight of stone steps. Whoosh! At this moment, Gu Yunting, who was meditating next to Lin Sun, stood up. His whole body was overflowing with light, and his momentum soared up to the sky. At this moment, he was already a Tao Insight Realm cultivator. Every move he made used the power of heaven and earth, with a kind of majesty that could swallow mountains and rivers. But in just a moment, he restrained his momentum and became transcendent again, like an exiled immortal, plain and extraordinary. When he saw Lin Sun, who was also standing on the 99th step, Gu Yunting couldn't help but be slightly stunned. He immediately withdrew his gaze, and his expression was calm like an ancient well. He was already different from Lin Sun. He was above the sea spirit realm, and became a real Tao insight realm cultivator. Lin Sun was destined to look up to him. A goshawk wouldn't care about an ant on the ground, because the two were in different realms. Just like Gu Yunting's state of mind at this moment, this was not a kind of arrogance, but a kind of transcendent and overlooking attitude. Lin Sun originally wanted to greet him, but when he saw Gu Yunting's attitude of above all living beings, he suddenly smiled, ignored him, and stepped up. Almost at the same time, Gu Yunting also stepped on the last stone step. Swish! The two arrived at the same time, but they didn't look at each other, as if the other didn't exist. This is the peak of Tiandi Mountain? Lin Sun's gaze swept around, and he saw clouds and rosy clouds, old rocks with vines hanging on them, orchids emitting fragrance, and a scorching sun hanging high in the sky, sprinkling down magnificent golden light. The mountains and rivers were beautiful, and the scenery was picturesque, giving people a feeling of having a view of all the small mountains. However, apart from that, there was nothing special about it. Gu Yunting was even more direct. He swept his gaze around, then turned around and left. His white clothes fluttered, and he suddenly disappeared into the sky. From beginning to end, he didn't look at Lin Sun again. I only hope that if we meet in the ancient desolation realm in the future, you can still be like this. Lin Sun sighed with emotion. He didn't have any ill feelings towards Gu Yunting, but he suddenly remembered what the headmaster had said. He knew that as long as Gu Yunting entered the ancient desolation realm, he would definitely go to the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land to cultivate, and the Heaven's Pivot Holy Land was a place that would bring disaster to him. Lin Sun couldn't help but worry that if he met Gu Yunting in the future, they might become enemies, and it wouldn't be like today. Even if they ignored each other, they could live in harmony. In front of the hut, when Lin Sun arrived, the headmaster had already left. He didn't know that when he was climbing the Tiandi Mountain, the headmaster and the sloppy old man had stared at him and talked about his life experience. For more than 300 years, no one has been able to reach the peak of Tiandi Mountain. But today, you and Gu Yunting have done it together. It's really surprising. The sloppy old man said with a smile. Senior, you flatter me. Lin Sun smiled and cupped his hands. Little guy, you still don't have a master, do you? Do you want to consider becoming my disciple? The sloppy old man's eyes revealed a touch of enthusiasm, as if he was staring at a flawless jade. Lin Sun was surprised. Forget it, I'll think about it. After all, it's just a whim of mine, and I can't determine whether you are suitable to inherit my mantle. The sloppy old man said casually. Lin Sun almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. This old guy was too perfunctory. Just based on his attitude, he couldn't be his disciple. Not long after, Lin Sun took back his identity nameplate and turned to leave. Alas, what a pity! Why is this boy's life experience so special? In front of the hut, the sloppy old man sighed. In the spiritual affairs hall, as usual, it was bustling with activity. Many students of the school gathered here. Some came to exchange their points for the things they needed, and some came to get experience tasks. It was quite lively. Hey, isn't that Lin Sun? What? He's Lin Sun? He really looks too young. When Lin Sun arrived, he was immediately recognized, causing a lot of uproar. Since the news of what happened in Marshall Courtyard yesterday spread, Lin Sun could be regarded as a celebrity in Green Deer School. Everyone knew of his brutal deeds of defeating Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu and others, and then ascending to the first place of Sea Spirit Gold list. Therefore, when Lin Sun appeared in the Spiritual Affairs Hall, he naturally attracted a lot of attention. Chapter 499. What was Lin Sun doing here? Many people in the Spiritual Affairs Hall were curious. Lin Sun went straight to the area for exchanging spiritual materials, took out his identity nameplate, and handed it to an old man guarding the place. He said, "Sorry to trouble you to exchange for the horn of one-legged ox." The old man's pupils suddenly dilated. He stood up and asked incredulously, "Have you passed the celestial ladder?" "What celestial ladder?" Some students were confused. The mountain of Celestial Ladder is a mountain with traces of the Great Way. It's said that those who can climb up to it are the most powerful talents in the world. Because the Celestial Ladder is too difficult, no one has been able to set foot on it in the past hundreds of years. Soon, someone explained, which immediately aroused the exclamations of the crowd. "No way. Lin Sun is too fierce, isn't he? It can't be false. Didn't you hear that he wants to exchange for the horn of one-legged ox? As far as I know, only those who pass the celestial ladder are qualified to exchange for this treasure. He just ranked first on the Spiritual Sea Gold list yesterday, and today he passed the celestial ladder that no one has passed for hundreds of years. Do you think the students of our martial arts yard are going to die?" There was a lot of noise in the hall. Everyone looked at Lin Sun with surprise and doubt as if they were looking at a monster. Indeed, it seemed absurd. Lin Sun, a young master of spiritual tattoos in the yard of spiritual tattoos, had such a great achievement in martial cultivation. He was just like a monster, which made people not know what standard to use to measure him. It was so rare. The most terrible thing was that he was only 16 years old this year, but he could have such outstanding achievements in both spiritual tattoos and martial arts. It was just like going against the natural order. He really passed the test. The old man checked Lin Sun's identity nameplate. When he confirmed that Lin Sun was telling the truth, he was stunned and shocked. Finally, he handed a sealed black jade box to Lin Sun, which contained a horn of one-legged ox. "It's finally done." Lin Sun was completely relaxed. With the horn of one-legged ox, he had the core spiritual materials to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos. He only needed to wait for Shen Tua to prepare other spiritual materials, and then he could go to the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower to start his refining. Wait a minute. As soon as Lin Sun walked out of the Spiritual Affairs Hall, he was stopped. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his sleeves fluttered in the wind. His soft black hair was suffused with a luster, and his bearing was extraordinary, like that of an exiled immortal. It was actually Gu Yunting. When they saw Gu Yunting, the entire area boiled over. Many students stopped and looked at Gu Yunting with fanatical gazes. Perhaps Lin Sun was extremely dazzling, but he wasn't a member of the Martial Dao courtyard in the end. On the other hand, Gu Yunting was different. 5 years ago, his name had shaken the entire academy, and he'd become a blazing sun that was the focus of everyone's attention. But now, after 5 years of seclusion, he had appeared out of nowhere and was ranked on the legendary Spiritual Sea Master list. Such an outstanding person naturally became the target of fanatical worship. "What's up?" Lin Sun was surprised. He didn't expect that Gu Yunting, who had always been above all living beings, would take the initiative to appear in front of him. However, Lin Sun was not excited at all. He even guessed that the reason why this guy took the initiative to find him must be for something. "I need the Kuei Ox's horn. Can you give it to me?" "Don't worry, I can give you the same value of compensation." Gu Yunting opened his mouth with an indifferent voice. Standing there, he seemed to stand out from the crowd. His white clothes were whiter than snow, and his elegant demeanor was dazzling. Lin Sun secretly thought that he had guessed right. He shook his head without thinking. "Sorry, I also need the Kuei Ox's horn." Gu Yunting frowned slightly. "You should know that I had the chance to exchange for the Kuei Ox's horn before you." Lin Sun nodded. Yes, you and I ascended the mountain of celestial ladder at the same time, but unfortunately, you were a step slower. Hearing this, all the students nearby were shocked. They realized that in recent days, not only Lin Sun had ascended the mountain of celestial ladder, but even Gu Yunting had achieved this step. Something that hadn't happened for hundreds of years actually happened today. All of a sudden, those students looked at Gu Yunting in a different way. They became more and more fanatical and admiring. He deserved to be the existence that could be on the spiritual sea master list. He didn't give Lin Sun the chance to show off at all. Gu Yunting waved his sleeve, and a bright and colorful ball of light suddenly appeared in the void. All the people present were shocked, and their eyes widened. Those were more than a dozen kinds of spiritual materials and herbs that were hard to find in the world. The value of each kind was not inferior to that of the Kuei ox's horn. For example, a blood Ganoderma that had matured in 3,000 years was bright red and glistening, gushing out brilliant clouds, dyeing the void red, and diffusing a unique fragrance, making people feel as if their souls were going to be intoxicated by it after a sniff. For example, the octagonal purple copper iron, a thumb-sized piece, was worth tens of thousands of gold and was regarded as a rare treasure in the world. But this piece in front of them was as big as a fist, so it could be imagined how shocking its value was. In addition, there were rare treasures such as Shang Qingjin spiritual essence, Lan Yu Fuling, Alcade 9-star flower, and so on, dazzling and too much for the eyes to take in. From time to time, there was the sound of people gasping. Some were covetous and envious, and some were shocked and absent-minded. They didn't expect that Gu Yunting's net worth was so strong. The value of this batch of spiritual materials couldn't even be measured by money. Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. As a spiritual tattooist, he naturally knew how shocking the value of these spiritual materials was. You can choose to at will. Take it as compensation for giving up the horn of one-legged ox. I believe you have seen my sincerity, Gu Yunting said casually, still with a calm look, as if he was very sure that Lin Sun couldn't refuse this temptation. Because this kind of compensation had already far exceeded the value of the horn of one-legged ox. Many people couldn't help but envy Lin Sun. This guy was really lucky. If it were them, they definitely wouldn't dare to expect to get such a generous treatment. But unexpectedly, Lin Sun's black eyes were clear and calm. Without thinking, he refused again. The horn of one-legged ox is priceless to me. No matter what you give me, I can't give it up. Everyone was stunned. He actually refused? Even Gu Yunting was slightly stunned and couldn't help but frown. Not satisfied? Well, I can let you choose 3 spiritual materials. Lin Sun also frowned at once. This guy's tone was really big. Didn't he hear that Lin Sun didn't intend to give up this thing at all? Lin Sun, be content. Senior brother Gu Yunting has shown such sincerity. If you get an inch and want a foot, it will be a little too much. Lin Sun, you should feel honored to be treated with such courtesy by senior brother Gu Yunting. Some students nearby spoke up one after another, speaking up for Gu Yunting. Lin Sun immediately smiled. His gaze swept around, and in the end, he was too lazy to speak anymore. He turned around and left. He didn't have the mood to waste time with these guys. His attitude of disregard immediately annoyed many people. But because of Lin Sun's outstanding prestige yesterday, no one dared to stop Lin Sun. Gu Yunting couldn't help but show a touch of coldness between his brows. Because he needed to smelt a weapon, he was determined to get the horn of one-legged ox. He originally thought that he had shown enough sincerity, but he never thought that Lin Sun still didn't appreciate it. This made him a little unhappy. You are Lin Sun? I hope you can give up the horn of one-legged ox. Suddenly, a sweet voice sounded. A young girl came from afar. She had a delicate and beautiful appearance, snow-white skin and jade-like bones. Her whole body was flowing with a layer of crystal radiance. Her delicate body was slender, slim and graceful, and her small waist could be grasped in one arm. The curves of her figure were perfect, without a single flaw to be found. This was a kind of dazzling beauty like that of a phoenix. Seeing her, the whole audience was immediately stirred. Princess Spirit Phoenix is here. 5 years ago, she had a close relationship with Gu Yunting. Who would have thought that just as Gu Yunting came out of seclusion, she would hear the news and come, reappearing in the academy. Princess Spirit Phoenix was the most favored daughter of the current great emperor. She had a peerless appearance, stunning talent, and incomparably amazing cultivation talent. Her identity could also be said to be incomparably famous, and she was the pearl of the current imperial family. 5 years ago, she had cultivated in the martial arts courtyard. Until Gu Yunting went into seclusion, she suddenly returned to the imperial family and never appeared in the academy again. And now, Gu Yunting had just come out of seclusion, and Princess Spirit Phoenix had also appeared in the academy. This caused many people to be unable to help but let their imaginations run wild. At this moment, she blocked Lin Sun's path. Her beautiful face was like a phoenix that had descended to the world. In fact, she was indeed like a proud phoenix. When she spoke, her sparkling and flawless chin was slightly raised, revealing her snow-white swan-like neck. She was incomparably arrogant. "That's right, I'm Lin Sun. But I've already said that I don't intend to give up the one-legged ox's horn. I also hope that you won't block my way," Lin Sun said with a smile, but in fact, he was already somewhat impatient in his heart. Why was Gu Yunting the same as this Princess Spirit Phoenix? They both looked as if they had him in the bag. They really took him too seriously. Many people were shocked and secretly smacked their lip. They felt that Lin Sun was too daring. First, he refused Gu Yunting, and now even when Princess Spirit Phoenix appeared, he didn't give her any face at all. Wasn't he worried that he would offend too many people and cause endless troubles in the future? "I've long heard that you, Lin Sun, are extremely daring and run amok. Today I've finally seen it for myself. But since I'm here today, you must give up the one-legged ox's horn." Princess Spirit Phoenix frowned, and her whole body was filled with a pressing noble and proud aura. Although her voice was pleasant to the ear, her words had a domineering and commanding tone. Obviously, this was not the first time she had done this. Lin Sun completely lost his patience. He waved his hand and said, "I don't care who you are. Today, it's useless even if God comes. Get out of my way." Everyone nearby couldn't help but gasp. Lin Sun was simply arrogant to the point of lawlessness. This was Princess Spirit Phoenix, the descendant of the current emperor. Who dared to talk to her like this? "How dare you? How dare you offend Her Highness? Believe it or not, you will be punished today." Next to him, a young man scolded. His voice was cold and stern, and his whole body was full of a threatening momentum. "Who the hell are you? Stay aside." Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He didn't want to cause any trouble before refining the armor of spiritual tattoos. But he never thought that after enduring blindly, the other really took him as a soft persimmon. Everyone nearby felt a little confused. The identity of the young man was also not simple. He was the direct descendant of the Qi family, a superior aristocratic family. His name was Qiyu. As early as last year, he had broken through the Tao Insight realm and went to the Zhen Wu courtyard to cultivate. He was absolutely a talent with extremely frightening identity, status, and strength. But now, Lin Sun unceremoniously scolded Qiyu. He was too daring. Chapter 500. Qiyu's body was tall and slender. He was handsome and extraordinary. His eyes shone with a golden light, incomparably terrifying. Golden pupil reflection. This was a vision unique to the direct bloodline of the Qi family. They were gifted and compatible with the Great Way. When they reached the Tao Insight realm, they could perfectly control the power of the concept of gold. It was extremely terrifying. As an influential figure of the younger generation, ever since Qiyu stepped into the Tao Insight realm last year and was admitted to the Zhen Wu courtyard to cultivate, He had attracted the attention of many influential figures. In the current Green Deer School, almost no one dared to oppose him. Even some instructors were courteous to Chi-yu. But at this time, Lin Sun rebuked Chi-yu in a rude manner. Everyone was naturally shocked and thought that Lin Sun's courage was so great that it almost broke through the sky. Chi-yu's face became cold. Golden light surged in his eyes. He glanced at Lin Sun like dazzling lightning. "You dare to be rude to me?" Chi-yu's voice was like a sword. His killing intent spread. Everyone's face changed. They knew that Lin Sun's words had angered Chi-yu. The consequences were unimaginable. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of it. He put his hands behind his back and squinted at Chi-yu. "I am teaching you a lesson. Don't you understand? As a student, you dare to offend your superiors, offend the instructor, and threaten him. You are really bold." Everyone was stunned. No one had thought that Lin Sun would use his identity as an instructor to suppress Chi-yu. It was fair and square. No one could refute him. Everyone knew that Lin Sun was indeed an instructor. Even if he was only 16 years old, even if he was only an instructor of the spiritual tattoo courtyard in Green Deer School, his identity was not something that any student could slander. Even Chi-yu's expression froze. He did not expect Lin Sun to play such a trick. "You were the one who disrespected Princess Spirit Phoenix first, and then slandered me. I merely wanted to tell you what was right and wrong, yet you used your status as an instructor to abuse your authority. Someone as shameless as you, do you think you're fit to lecture me?" Chi-yu sucked in a deep breath, his expression turning cold and severe. "Oh, I didn't expect that the students these days are so arrogant. They don't even respect the instructors. When I have the chance, I will go and ask the dean if any random cat or dog that jumps out of nowhere dares to trample on the rules and disrespect the instructors," Lin Sun said slowly with a fearless look. Everyone cursed in their hearts. Not only was this fellow arrogant, he was also shameless. As soon as he saw that the situation wasn't right, he used his identity as an instructor as a shield. Chi-yu was infuriated. Ever since he started cultivating, who dared to use the word Tom, Dick, or Harry to describe him? He was simply tired of living. "People like you don't deserve to be an instructor. I'll personally step in and have the academy strip you of your identity as an instructor. Let's see how arrogant you can be then." On the other side, Princess Spirit Phoenix also couldn't take it anymore. She felt that Lin Sun's face was too hateful, refusing a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit. Everyone's hearts trembled. Princess Spirit Phoenix's identity was not ordinary. If she really did this, it was possible that the academy would react and strip Lin Sun of his teaching qualifications. However, Lin Sun didn't care at all. He sneered and said, "All right, go quickly. I'll wait for your good news." With an indifferent look, he turned around and walked away. "Stop right there." Princess Spirit Phoenix was so angry that she clenched her teeth. She was the descendant of the current emperor. Her status was respected and her appearance was peerless. Wherever she went, she was respected and no one dared to go against her. Who would have thought that Lin Sun, a mere instructor, dared to look down on her? "Do you still remember Marquis Lingtian?" After saying this, Lin Sun strode away without looking back. Marquis Lingtian. Who wouldn't remember? Lin Sun's words had an obvious meaning. It was a warning. However, he didn't expect that it would be better if he didn't mention Marquis Lingtian. Once he did, Princess Spirit Phoenix was furious. This was a disgrace to the royal family of the empire. Lin Sun didn't repent and atone for his crimes, and even dared to threaten her with this matter. He was simply too arrogant. The other students present were also frightened. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would dare to mention Marquis Lingtian in front of Princess Spirit Phoenix. What was the difference between this and courting death? "Lin Sun, if you don't kneel and atone for your crimes today, don't even think about leaving." Suddenly, Chi-yu shouted loudly. Golden light rose from his body and transformed into a giant hand that grabbed at Lin Sun in the distance. The giant hand rumbled and pressed down on the void. It was surrounded by blazing light, and the power of the Great Way was imprinted in it. It was sharp, overbearing, and wanted to crush everything. It was incomparably terrifying. Everyone nearby felt their skin prickling and their hearts trembling. This was the power of the Tao Insight Realm, the embodiment of the concept of gold. No one expected that Qi Yu would be so strong. It was obvious that he wanted to suppress Lin Sun with one strike and force him to make a fool of himself. Princess Spirit Phoenix looked proud as she looked on coldly. Lin Sun's actions just now embarrassed her. Naturally, she hoped that Qi Yu could suppress Lin Sun with one strike. Gu Yunting didn't say anything from beginning to end. He seemed very aloof, as if he didn't care about what was happening in front of him. Boom! The giant golden hand fell, and the void collapsed. It was boundlessly overbearing, and brilliant golden light surged. Just as Lin Sun's figure was about to be covered, Lin Sun suddenly turned around, and a trace of coldness flashed through his black eyes. A fist energy was like a python coming out of the abyss. It was suffused with a faint cyan glow, and like a cyan full moon rising, it ruthlessly smashed out. In an instant, a violent collision occurred here. It was earth-shaking, and multicolored light swept out, drowning everything. Many people's expressions changed, and they retreated one after another. To them, Qi Yu's attack was too terrifying. It displayed the power of the Tao Insight Realm, and it possessed unimaginable destructive power. It could almost sweep away any sea of spirit realm existence. But to everyone's surprise, when the smoke and dust dissipated, Lin Sun wasn't suppressed. He stood there with his black hair fluttering in the wind. His whole body was enshrouded in faint cyan divine light, and he had a kind of spiritual and ethereal momentum. He actually blocked it? How is this possible? Those students were flabbergasted, and they couldn't believe their eyes. They all knew that Lin Sun was almost invincible in the sea of spirit realm, and extremely abnormal. But there was still a big gap between him and the Tao Insight Realm. It was like a natural chasm that couldn't be crossed. But now Lin Sun faced this attack head-on without dodging, and he wasn't injured at all. How could this not be shocking? Gu Yunting, who had always been aloof from the world, couldn't help but narrow his eyes and frown. Although Qi Yu had just advanced to the Tao Insight Realm last year, his bloodline was ancient, and he was innately close to the Great Way of Metal. His combat strength was more outstanding than ordinary Tao Insight Realm existences. But Lin Sun was able to take Qi Yu's attack head-on. This was indeed very unusual. There was a moment of absolute silence. Even Qi Yu couldn't help but be stunned. Others didn't know, but he knew very well that he had used 50% of his strength in this attack. He wanted to suppress Lin Sun with one move, make him kneel on the ground, and make a fool of himself in front of everyone. But Lin Sun actually blocked it in the end. Are you sure you want me to kneel and atone for my crimes? Lin Sun's handsome face was indifferent. His black eyes were like lightning, as deep as the abyss. He was already enraged. His third brother had been provoked again and again, and even attacked him. This had already touched Lin Sun's bottom line. Even a clay figurine had some temper, let alone Lin Sun. He was someone who was never willing to suffer losses. Qi Yu, why show mercy when dealing with such a shameless thief? Princess Spirit Phoenix spoke, somewhat displeased. She thought that Qi Yu was holding back his strength, so she simply ignored Lin Sun's words. Your Highness, rest assured. I will capture him right now. Qi Yu's expression turned cold. He stepped out. His figure was tall and slender, and his bearing was dignified. At this moment, he was circulating his strength, and his whole body was surrounded by a golden glow. His blood and qi were boiling, and his aura soared into the sky, causing the void to wail. Dong! He formed a seal with his hands, and a golden cloud appeared. It was as majestic as a mountain, and it pressed down. At that moment, the world seemed to collapse, unable to withstand this terrifying power. The airflow rumbled, and golden light shot out. Lin Sun smiled, revealing a mouthful of snow-white teeth. That smile was warm and bright, but his black eyes were cold. Those who understood Lin Sun knew that he was truly angry. "Since you are looking for a beating, I will fulfill your wish." With a calm and indifferent voice, Lin Sun used the ice drake steps and rushed forward. Almost at the same time, the spiritual sea in his body was operating at full force, like a storm awakening from silence. With a punch, the mountains and rivers collapsed, the void exploded, and the cries of dragons and phoenixes appeared. It was filled with a mighty power that could shake the world. This was the 9 strikes of shaking heaven, superimposed by Lin Sun's 7 stacks. Rumble and earth-shattering collision sounded. Everyone nearby was shaken to the point that their blood and chi churned. Their bodies trembled, and they had no choice but to retreat in shock. It was too terrifying. If this happened in the outside world, the land within a radius of thousands of feet would most likely be sunk. Fortunately, it was in Green Deer Academy, and the surrounding void was covered with a mysterious and ancient defensive power. It silently dissolved much of the destruction and destruction. Chi was shocked. This blow was once again blocked by Lin Sun. The others were also shocked, as if they had seen a ghost. Blocking the first blow might have been luck, but blocking the second blow, how could it be luck? But Lin Sun did not waste any words. His figure was like an ice dragon, suddenly disappearing in the void. The next moment, he had already rushed to Chi, his fist punching down. Too fast. Lin Sun displayed the mysteries of the ice drake steps to the fullest. Chi could not help but feel his heart tighten, and he hurriedly raised his hand to block. "Kneel down first." At this time, Lin Sun's black hair was flying, and his handsome face was full of disdain. His body was like a precious cauldron, shining brilliantly. He had used all his strength. A simple and unadorned fist force rushed out, without a trace of smoke or fire. It was like a natural creation, light and gentle. Boom! Chi only felt pain in his arms. A copious and irresistible force pressed down on him, like a divine mountain moving horizontally. It pressed down on his body fiercely, making his head buzz, and his muscles and bones almost explode. Then, with a thud, he fell from the void. "You're courting death!" He roared angrily, the blood and chi all over his body burning. But it was already a step too late. Lin Sun had already taken the opportunity to arrive. One palm pressed on the top of Chi Yu's head, and the other hand fiercely slapped on his shoulder. Chapter 501. Everything happened too fast. From Lin Sun's counterattack to Chi Yu being suppressed and kneeling on the ground, it almost ended in the blink of an eye. Some practitioners didn't even have time to react. They only saw a blur in front of their eyes. Chi Yu, who had monstrous divine power and imposing manner, knelt on the ground. They widened their eyes and looked dull. They couldn't believe their own eyes. The direct descendant of the dignified Qi clan, a Tao Insight Realm expert of the Zhen Wu side courtyard, had knelt down just like that before he could release his divine mightiness? This scene was too shocking. It might be understandable if Qi Yu was suppressed by other Tao Insight Realm cultivators, but he was defeated by a Sea Spirit Realm young man. Moreover, he was suppressed in an instant without experiencing a fierce battle. This was simply too unbelievable. Looking at the whole world, from ancient to modern times, there were almost no similar examples. After all, this was crossing a great realm and defeating a stronger cultivator. With the foundation of Sea Spirit Realm, he overpowered a Tao Insight Realm cultivator. If they didn't see it with their own eyes, they probably wouldn't dare to believe it. Princess Spirit Phoenix was also stunned. Her starry eyes widened and her red lips slightly opened. She looked as if she was struck by lightning. She also didn't expect that Qi Yu would lose in such a way. It was simply too humiliating. A Tao Insight Realm cultivator was suppressed and knelt on the ground by a Sea Spirit Realm cultivator. If it was spread out, his wisdom would be destroyed and he would become a laughingstock. Gu Yunting's white clothes fluttered in the wind. His figure was unique and there was an inexplicable qi circulating around him. He had just crossed the tribulation and advanced to the Tao Insight realm. Originally, he regarded himself as an eagle and Lin Sun as an ant. They were destined to be people of two different worlds. Therefore, he didn't take Lin Sun seriously. But now, he finally realized that the young man who had ascended to the top of the stairway mountain with him actually possessed a heaven-defying combat strength. He could not help but feel surprised and shocked, and he could not maintain his previous indifference and aloofness. If they knew that Lin Sun had killed more than one Tao Insight Realm cultivator in the ancient spirit world, they wouldn't have reacted like this. At that time, Lin Sun's spiritual veins hadn't been completely transformed. Now, his cultivation, soul, and physique had all reached an unprecedented level. At this moment, in order to deal with Qiyu, Lin Sun used all his strength unexpectedly. Qiyu was unable to resist. After all, Qiyu could never imagine that Lin Sun, a practitioner of Sea Spirit Realm, could be so cruel. Ah! Qiyu roared angrily, his eyes about to pop out of their sockets. His face was ashen and twisted as he struggled to get up. Since he started cultivating until now, even though he couldn't be said to be one of the top figures amongst his peers, he could still be considered to be a genius that was the center of attention. When had he ever suffered such extraordinary humiliation? Being forced to kneel by a spiritual ocean-tier youngster, this was even more unbearable than being killed. It made him so mad that he almost went insane. Kneel down and repent. With a snap, Lin Sun pressed Qiyu's head with his right hand and slapped Qiyu's shoulder with his left hand, making Qiyu twitch all over and unable to exert his strength. Seeing Lin Sun being so rude, people nearby couldn't help but gasp. This guy was really cruel. As for Qiyu, he was so ashamed and angry that he wanted to die. He was so sullen that he was about to go crazy. He was a dignified disciple of the true martial courtyard, a proud son of the Grotto Heaven realm. Even ordinary instructors had to be courteous to him. But now, he was forced to kneel down by Lin Sun. Such humiliation made his eyes bloodshot with hatred. His expression was ferocious, and he no longer had that unique arrogant demeanor from before. Lin Sun, if you have the guts, kill me. Otherwise, I will pull out your tendons, peel your skin, and grind your bones into ashes. You will never have a good death. Qiyu's voice seemed to be squeezed out from his chest, filled with endless hatred and killing intent. Everyone felt a chill. They were sure that since Qiyu dared to say so, he would definitely dare to do so. He had undoubtedly treated Lin Sun as a mortal enemy. Slap. Lin Sun slapped Qiyu's cheek. The sound was crisp and clear, leaving a red and swollen palm print, making everyone nearby feel the pain and panic. As a student, you trampled on the rules of the school and offended your superiors. Now that I asked you to kneel down and repent, you didn't repent and even dared to act violently. Do you really think I don't dare to kill you? At this moment, Lin Sun's expression was serious and awe-inspiring. His black eyes were cold and deep, bursting with killing intent. Being forced to kneel on the ground and then receiving a crisp slap, Qiyu was stunned. He didn't dare to imagine that there was someone in this world who dared to treat him like this. Was he really not afraid of death? Not only Qiyu, but everyone nearby was also dumbfounded. At this moment, they finally understood why Lin Sun dared to force Marquis Lingtianhao to kneel. This guy was originally a person who ran amok and acted recklessly. Qiyu was about to fly into a rage and leave behind some harsh words, but when he met Lin Sun's gaze, he felt as if a knife was scraping his bones. His heart was filled with a chill. He suddenly had a strong intuition that if he continued to struggle and resist, this guy in front of him would definitely not hesitate to kill him. This caused his expression to change. For the first time, he clearly felt a fatal threat. Lin Sun, you are too impudent. I'll give you a chance. Release Chi-Yu now. Otherwise, no matter how heaven-defying your talent is, you are destined to suffer today. Princess Spirit Phoenix's expression was cold and indifferent, emitting an oppressive majesty. Everyone's heart trembled. Princess Spirit Phoenix was peerless, even her voice was clear and pleasant to listen to. But at this moment, her words were full of killing intent, full of threats, making people's hearts turn cold. No one dared to doubt her words, because this was the youngest daughter of the current emperor. Her status was like the moon in the sky, indescribably noble. One word from her could decide a person's life or death. But Lin Sun was unperturbed, his tone calm. I haven't even settled the score with you, but you have already threatened me. Do you really think that just because you are a descendant of the imperial family, you can be lawless? Remember, this is Green Deer School. Your identity is a student. If you dare to behave atrociously, I will teach you how to behave. Hiss. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. What did it mean to run amok and have no scruples? That was it. Reprimanding a pearl in the palm of the current emperor, perhaps only Lin Sun alone dared to do so. Are you provoking me? Princess Spirit Phoenix's face was as cold as ice. It was obvious that she was completely enraged. With her current status, even the head of an aristocratic family would not dare to reprimand her. But Lin Sun had repeatedly looked down on her. This was simply the greatest blasphemy against her dignity. It's not a provocation. I just want to tell you that when I suppressed Marquis Lingtian, the current emperor and empress did not stop me. If you really want to follow in the footsteps of Marquis Lingtian, I can satisfy you today. Lin Sun's voice was calm. He stood there with his black hair draped over his shoulders. His figure was tall and slender, one hand pressed on the top of Chi-Yu's head. Combined with the words he said, there was a kind of power that looked down on the world. Everyone was surprised. They had to admit that no matter how arrogant and presumptuous Lin Sun was, the courage and bearing he displayed was indeed something that few could match. You! Princess Spirit Phoenix clenched her teeth, her eyes spitting fire. This was the first time she had seen such a madman like Lin Sun. He was simply a bastard and deserved to die 1,000 times. Young people, each take a step back and stop fighting. At this moment, from the Spiritual Affairs Hall not far away, an old man walked out and spoke in a low voice. This was an old man respectfully known as Old Song Inwang. He had an extraordinary status, and had always been in charge of the Spiritual Affairs Hall. His origin was unfathomable and his power was as vast as the sea, immeasurable. No, Princess Spirit Phoenix said resolutely. I also don't agree. Lin Sun had already decided to shed all pretense of cordiality. How could he back down now? I was just unwilling to give up the horn of the Kuei ox, and was repeatedly provoked and humiliated by these students. They even dared to attack me. You have to know that I am a teacher and they still dared to do this. They are simply lawless, and have no regard for the rules of Green Deer Academy. His words were harsh, powerful and resonant, shaking the heavens and the earth, shocking everyone present. They realized that Lin Sun's actions obviously meant that he knew he could not be merciful and intended to make the matter even more serious. Indeed, this was Lin Sun's plan. He had no choice but to make trouble. Since he had already offended them, he did not mind making the matter even more serious. It would be best if he could make the entire Green Deer Academy know about it. What happened? In the distance, more and more people were alarmed and hurried over. Seeing this, Song Inwang, who walked out of the Spiritual Affairs Hall, could not help but sigh. He had been in the Spiritual Affairs Hall the whole time and saw everything with his own eyes. Naturally, he knew the ins and outs of the matter. Lin Sun, I believe that the Academy will give you a satisfactory explanation for today's matter. I hope you will stop now and stop making trouble. Song Yinwing said. This time, his voice became even more dignified and had a kind of deterrent power that could directly touch the hearts of people. The audience was in an uproar. They were all surprised. It was obvious that Song Yinwing was standing on the side of the public and did not help Princess Spirit Emperor and the others. Hearing this, Princess Spirit Phoenix's face darkened and she was extremely angry. She was about to speak but was stopped by Gu Yunting, who transmitted his voice to her. Let's leave it like this for the time being. There are many important people who have already paid attention to this matter. It's not good to continue making trouble. Princess Spirit Phoenix's face was gloomy and her starry eyes were filled with anger. She stared at Lin Sun for a long time and finally snorted coldly, not saying anything more. As for Chi Yu, his face was ugly. There were more and more people who came to watch the show and he was still forced to kneel on the ground. This made him so ashamed and angry that he wanted to slit his own throat and commit suicide. Lin Sun, let's leave it like this. Since Song Yinwing has spoken, I believe he will give you a satisfactory answer. Suddenly, the voice of Shen Tuo, a senior spirit tattoo master of the Spirit Tattoo Courtyard, rang in Lin Sun's ears. Obviously, Shen Tuo was also alarmed and rushed here. Lin Sun was silent for a moment, then immediately cupped his hands towards Song Yinwing and said, "Since Senior has spoken, how can Junior refuse? But Junior hopes that today's matter will not happen again. Otherwise, the rules of our Green Deer Academy will become a decoration." After saying this, he turned around and left. From beginning to end, he did not even look at Chi Yu, Princess Spirit Emperor, Gu Yunting and the others. "Just you wait, I don't believe you will hide in the academy forever." Princess Spirit Phoenix was so angry that her whole body was trembling and her teeth were itching. "Lin Sun, if I don't kill you, I swear I am not a human." Chi Yu also roared in his heart, his eyes full of hatred and killing intent. Gu Yunting watched Lin Sun leave. His expression was as aloof as before, but there was a faint cold light overflowing in his eyes. Today's incident could be said to be a humiliation to the three of them, and everyone knew that they would definitely not swallow this humiliation. Chapter 502. Lin Sun, how did you provoke Princess Spirit Phoenix and Chi Yu? The background of these two people is bigger than the other. There are very few people in Green Deer Academy who dare to provoke them. I didn't provoke them. They provoked me first. Alas, you are still young and impetuous. Now that you have offended them, the consequences are worrying. On the way back to Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, Shen Tuo sighed and looked worried. He was also shocked by Lin Sun's actions just now. Not only did Lin Sun dare to reprimand Princess Spirit Phoenix, he even forced Chi Yu to kneel on the ground. Lin Sun looked indifferent and relaxed. He said leisurely, "Senior, I am the victim. I have been very generous not to pursue their fault." Shen Tuo smiled bitterly. "That's true, but aren't you worried about their revenge?" Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. "Do they dare to commit murder in Green Deer School? Of course not. What a joke, this is Green Deer School. Not to mention them, even the big shots of the Imperial Royal Family dare not act recklessly." "That's enough," Lin Sun said with a smile. "Senior, don't worry. I have offended many people since I entered the Forbidden City. It doesn't matter if I offend a few more." Seeing Lin Sun's desperate look, Shen Tuo smiled bitterly again. He couldn't understand Lin Sun. He was too bold and didn't seem to know what fear was. When they returned to Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, the two began to talk business. Shen Tuo told Lin Sun that he had used all his strength to exchange for the spiritual materials Lin Sun needed. In less than 3 days, all the spiritual materials would be collected. After knowing this, Lin Sun immediately decided to go to the 9th floor of the spiritual tower and start to prepare for the spiritual tattoo armor in advance. On the same day, the news that Lin Sun suppressed Chi Yu and reprimanded Princess Spirit Phoenix spread throughout Green Deer School, causing a great uproar. No one expected that Lin Sun would be so unwilling to be left out. On the first day after returning to school, he made a scene in the martial arts arena of Martial Garden and defeated Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu, Shui Yun and other geniuses. On the same day, he reached the first place in Spiritual Sea Gold list, overshadowing all the disciples in Martial Garden. On the second day, he had even reprimanded Princess Spirit Phoenix under the watchful eyes of the crowd and forced Chi Yu to kneel on the ground. He was simply too troublesome. Is Lin really not afraid of death? This was what everyone was wondering. They couldn't understand why he dared to act so unrestrained, as if he didn't know fear. No matter what, Lin Sun is a great young talent after all. Not only does he have unparalleled attainments in spiritual tattoos, but he can also suppress other talents in martial arts. He is a monster. There were also many people who sighed with emotion, and many voices echoed their sentiments. Indeed, I thought it was shocking enough for him to be ranked first on the Spirit Sea Gold ranking, but in just one day, he passed the Heaven Stairway test that no one has passed for hundreds of years. This is just too terrifying. Not only that, didn't you see that Chi Yu was also suppressed by him? With the cultivation of the Sea of Souls realm, not only was he not defeated, but he even suppressed his opponent. Looking at the entire Green Deer Academy, how many people can do this? Alas, this guy really makes people speechless. His temperament is so cruel and arrogant, but his talent and foundation are so amazing. I can't understand it. Lin Sun was completely popular. At least in the Green Deer Academy, people were talking about his deeds everywhere, which even alarmed many big shots. However, the evaluation of him was mixed. Half of it was good and half of it was bad, and half of it was controversial. This was unavoidable. Many people were sneering and thought that Lin Sun would be killed sooner or later, because he had offended too many people and forces by now. Among the 7 top aristocratic families of the empire, the Hua family, the Song family, the Qin family, the Zhuo family, the Qi family, and the Qi family, except for the Xie family, he had offended the other 6 families. This was too shocking. Who could imagine that a 16-year-old boy who had just entered the Forbidden City for less than a year had offended so many powerful forces one after another? The most important thing was that Lin Sun had offended the imperial family more than once. The first time, he forced Marquis Ling Tianhao to kneel down, which shocked the whole world. The second time, he reprimanded Princess Ling Wang in front of her, which embarrassed her. It could be imagined how many opponents and enemies Lin Sun had now, which had reached a shocking level. Some people even joked that in the whole Forbidden City, if Lin Sun claimed to be the second in the means of offending people, no one dared to claim to be the first. Under such circumstances, many people suspected that Lin Sun would definitely suffer a lot of hostility and revenge in the future. Maybe he would be obliterated one day and die prematurely. In fact, it was true. On the second day after Lin Sun forced Chi Yu to kneel down, students from Martial Arts School and Martial Arts School stood out one after another and joined forces to ask the big shots of the school to condemn Lin Sun's bad behavior. Lin Sun insulted Princess Ling Wang, desecrated the imperial family's reputation, and forced students to kneel down. Such behavior is infuriating. If Lin Sun is not punished, we will not let it go. These students were filled with righteous indignation and put on a stance that they could not live under the same sky with Lin Sun. They believed that Lin Sun had ruined the reputation of the teachers and wantonly slandered and humiliated students. His methods were cruel and outrageous. They must punish him severely, deprive him of his teaching qualification, and expel him from the school as a warning to others. As soon as this storm broke out, not only did it not subside, but it became more and more intense. More and more students joined in. For a moment, Lin Sun seemed to have become an unpardonable criminal and was condemned by many students. These students gathered together and made Green Deer School restless. Later, the big shots of the school did not dare to sit back and watch, and began to resolve this storm. Therefore, some big shots suggested that it would be better to deprive Lin Sun of his teaching qualification and expel him from the teaching to appease the students' anger. There were also many big shots who retorted that Lin Sun had not violated the rules of Green Deer School. If he was deprived of his teaching qualification, it would only make people feel bitterly disappointed. In short, this storm was very big and it caused a lot of uproar. In the end, all the questions revolved around whether to expel Lin Sun or not. Regarding this, some people were excited and thought that Lin Sun would receive the punishment he deserved and be expelled from Green Deer School. There were also some people who were angry and thought that all the accusations against Lin Sun were nonsense and that Lin Sun was completely framed. Of course, those with a bit of brain knew that the reason why this storm was so big was that there must be someone behind it adding fuel to the fire. Or, from the very beginning, this storm was secretly manipulated by someone. Would the school expel Lin Sun? Many students and teachers were paying close attention to this. Chapter 503. Haha, let's see how Lin Sun can be arrogant now. In a hall, Zui Yujing laughed heartily. His figure was tall and slender, sitting cross-legged with a kind of soaring spirit. Nearby, Lan Yu, Jin Zhulu, Shui Yun, Shi Yunping and others all smiled. This time, we have mobilized all our forces. The momentum is great and the public is indignant. It has attracted the attention of the big shots in the school. Lin Sun is doomed to be doomed. Jin Zhulu said coldly. This is what they call the evils they bring upon themselves. Lin Sun is really arrogant to even dare to offend Her Highness Spirit Phoenix and Chiyu. Isn't he just tired of living after eating arsenic? Shi Yunping sneered. Lin Sun has extraordinary attainments in spiritual tattoos and extremely dazzling martial arts. What if the school is unwilling to expel him? Lan Yu frowned and asked suddenly. Impossible. Zui Yujing was full of confidence. This time, senior brother Zhao Jingwen and I invited some elders of the school to put pressure on the school. I believe the school will never offend us for Lin Sun. Hearing this, everyone was shocked. They didn't expect that in order to completely expel Lin Sun, Zui Yujing and Zhao Jingwen invited some big shots. Immediately, they couldn't help laughing. This time, Lin Sun was really going to suffer. Not long after, a man walked in from outside the hall. He was wearing a jade robe with starry eyes and a pair of sword-like eyebrows. Standing there with his hands behind his back, he had an awe-inspiring heroic spirit. It was Zhao Jingwen, a member of the royal family. At the same time, he was also an outstanding talent in martial school. He had occupied the first place in Spirit Sea Golden List before. But as Gu Yunting came out and Lin Sun returned to Green Deer School, his ranking was broken and now, he fell to the second place. Greetings, senior brother Jingwen. Everyone dared not neglect and stood up to greet him. How's it going? Zhao Jingwen asked. Lin Sun's defeat is inevitable. The day he is expelled is the day he dies. Zui Yujing replied resolutely. Yes. Zhao Jingwen appeared very calm and unperturbed. Senior brother Jingwen, do we need to inform Her Highness of Spirit Phoenix and Chiyu? Shuiyan asked. No need. It's just Lin Sun. He's about to die. There's no need to mobilize so many people. It's okay to tell them when the matter is over. Speaking of this, Zhao Jingwen looked at Zui Yujing and said, I heard that your Zhou family has a grudge against Lin family of Heart Cleansing Peak. Since you decide to kill Lin Sun, will your family also deal with Heart Cleansing Peak? Zui Yujing said helplessly, now Heart Cleansing Peak has been closed and isolated from the world. I'm afraid it's difficult to deal with them in a short time. Don't worry. They can't hide in it forever. When Lin Sun dies, they are doomed to be leaderless. When the tree falls, the monkeys scatter. Zhao Jingwen muttered. My elders think so too. Zui Yujing smiled. Senior brother Zhou, bad news. Suddenly, a sharp voice rang out. One Mo Li Xiaofei ran in, looking flustered and exasperated. What happened? Zui Yujing frowned. The Academy has already made a decision. Whoever dares to cause trouble will be expelled from the Academy. Li Xiaofei said with a sad face. What? All the people's faces changed. They never expected that such a thing would happen. Was there any change? Even Zhao Jingwen was slightly stunned. It shouldn't be. I asked my uncle to come forward in person. He united more than a dozen big shots in the Academy to pressure Lin Sun. Can't they do anything to Lin Sun? Zhao Jingwen's uncle, Zhao Zhanye, was a deputy dean of martial arts school. He had great power and influence. It was incredible that even Zhao Zhanye didn't change the Academy's mind and expel Lin Sun. Is that true? Zui Yujing asked in a deep voice. Li Xiaofei quickly promised that it was absolutely true. For a while, the atmosphere in the hall became silent. Everyone's face was gloomy and uncertain. How could this be? They mobilized so many forces and made such a big noise, but they couldn't do anything to Lin Sun? Soon, they found out the specific news. Lin Sun is about to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo alone. This news was like a thunderclap, and it caused Zhao Jingwen, Zui Yujing, and the others to be stunned and be thrown into disorder. If this was true, it was easy to understand why the Academy didn't agree to expel Lin Sun. It was so shocking that no one dared to act recklessly. A young spiritual tattoo master, who once caused the vision of 9 dragons chant, was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to hurt him, let alone expel him. Damn it! It's really hateful. Jin Zhulu and others were unwilling to accept it, and their faces were extremely gloomy. They couldn't accept such a sudden change when they were about to successfully expel Lin Sun. It's impossible. He is only a 16-year-old spiritual tattoo master. How could he be able to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? This must be false. Lin Sun deliberately said so in order to ensure that he wouldn't be expelled from the Academy. Zui Yujing took a deep breath and said coldly. Everyone also came to their senses. How old was Lin Sun? Even if his attainments in spiritual tattoos were strong, how could he refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Good boy, in order not to be deprived of his teaching qualification, he used such a treacherous trick to deceive the big shots of the Academy. What an evil heart! Jin Zhulu gnashed his teeth. No matter what, the big shots of the Academy believed him. Now, even if Lin Sun couldn't do it, who would dare to expel him? Shui Yun sighed. I've heard that Lin Sun will start his closed-door training in the next few days and refine a suit of spiritual tattoo on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower alone. In order not to let him be disturbed by the outside world, the Academy has made a decision to ensure Lin Sun's safety with all its strength. And it has made it clear that anyone who dares to oppose Lin Sun at this time is against the whole Academy. When they heard the news, Zhao Jingwen and Zui Yujing fell into complete silence with mixed feelings. Lin Sun escaped a disaster again. If he really succeeded in refining a suit of spiritual tattoo, it would be more and more difficult for anyone to deal with him in the future, Zhao Jingwen murmured. He was very clear about how amazing the value of a suit of spiritual tattoo was, and how noble the spiritual tattooist who could refine a suit of spiritual tattoo would be. At least in the entire Xiao Empire, almost no one would choose to oppose such a person unless they were enemies with deep-sea blood feud. Not to mention killing such a person, even if they wanted to harm him, they would encounter countless obstacles and troubles. What should we do? Jin Zhulu and others couldn't help asking, completely confused by the news. Do you think Lin Sun can succeed? Zhao Jingwen's expression returned to calmness and he asked thoughtfully. Absolutely not. The answer was surprisingly unanimous. They didn't believe Lin Sun could succeed at all. What a joke. A 16-year-old young spiritual tattooist was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Nobody believed he could succeed. Throughout the ages, there wasn't a single similar example. In that case, it's easy. Let's wait for him to fail and then teach him a lesson that he can't bear. A cold light surged in Zhao Jingwen's eyes. He didn't believe that he couldn't kill Lin Sun. He was just a remnant of a declining clan, but he dared to blaspheme and slander the majesty of the royal family. If he was not killed, he was destined to become a stain on the royal family of the empire. Lin Sun is going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo by himself. When this news came out, it was like a thunder from the ninth heaven, making the whole Green Deer School seething and extremely sensational. A suit of spiritual tattoo. It was a kind of unparalleled treasure, mysterious and powerful. There were not many spiritual tattooists who could refine such a treasure in the whole empire. But now Lin Sun, a 16-year-old young spiritual tattooist, announced that he was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo. How could people not be shocked? Is it true or not? Many people were scrambling to ask. After all, this was just too shocking, and it was simply unimaginable. Lin Sun must have sensed that the situation was not good and deliberately released this news to avoid being expelled from the school. This was the opinion of many people. Because in recent days, many students and big shots were denouncing Lin Sun and wanted to deprive him of his teaching qualification and expel him from the school. At this moment, Lin Sun suddenly announced that he was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo, which would naturally make people think that it was a means of self-protection rather than a real suit of spiritual tattoo. It's hard to say. I heard that Master Shin Tu also appeared and specially let Lin Sun use the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Some people also thought that Lin Sun had an unimaginable talent in spiritual tattoos because he had once caused the 9 dragons chant. Maybe he really had a chance to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo this time. In a word, the Green Deer School was completely shocked. Both teachers and students were attracted by this news and started a heated discussion. Later, the news spread out of Green Deer School at an exaggerated speed and spread throughout the Forbidden City. Refine a suit of spiritual tattoo? Is Lin Sun crazy? If he can do it, I can eat shit. How can a 16-year-old boy refine such a peerless weapon as a suit of spiritual tattoo? He is so arrogant and ignorant. It's Lin Sun again. Why is there so much news about him these days? This guy is too good at making trouble. Unlike in the past, when they learned that Lin Sun was going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoo, almost everyone in the Forbidden City doubted it. They thought that with Lin Sun's current ability, it was almost impossible for him to do it. But there were also many people who paid close attention to it. Lin Sun was already a well-known figure in the Forbidden City. Many almost impossible things had happened to him. This time, since he dared to do this, he must have a certain degree of confidence. Chapter 504. The golden vine was full of spiritual clouds, shining as if it was cast in gold. The patterns on it were sharp and dazzling. The crimson blood cloud astral rock floated in the air and emitted strands of scarlet light. It was beautiful and alluring. The purple copper coiling dragon iron was translucent and lustrous, surrounded by purple clouds. There seemed to be a dragon emerging inside it. The horn of the one-legged ox, half a foot long, was green and simple. However, a faint roar spread from it, shaking the void layer by layer. Dozens of rare spiritual materials appeared, all of which were the core materials for refining the armor of spiritual tattoos. Apart from that, there were also over 1,000 types of supplementary spirit materials of various colors that were dazzling and dazzling. Some were needed to smelt spirit ink, some were needed to set up formation patterns, and there were all sorts of them. Lin Sun looked ethereal and tranquil. He focused on the spiritual materials in front of him, sifting and dividing them into different categories. On the 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower, there was a tripod furnace with 3 feet and 2 handles. It had a round mouth and was marked with the breath of time. The tripod furnace was named Cyan. It was an important weapon in the yard of spiritual tattoos. It was specially used to smelt spiritual materials. The dense Taoist patterns in it had incredible magical effect. When all the spiritual materials were sorted out, Lin Sun's eyes fell on the cyan tripod furnace. At this moment, his body and mind both inside and outside entered an extremely ethereal and calm state. He was spotless and had no distracting thoughts, just like the moon in the blue sea. Lin Sun had been preparing for this moment for a long time. Now he was finally going to refine his first armor of spiritual tattoos, but he was not excited at all. No worries, no joy, no sorrow. The wind and rain in the outside world, the suppressed hatred and distracting thoughts in his heart were no longer important at this moment. Let's get started. Lin Sun stepped forward and began to refine. Every step and every detail had been replayed in his mind countless times. When he started, everything seemed so natural, calm and unhurried. The tripod furnace glowed and produced a roar, which resounded in the empty 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower. Lin Sun buried himself here, smelting spiritual materials, boiling spiritual ink, washing spiritual tattoos. He was so focused and serious that he forgot everything else. In the outside world, the storm was raging and undercurrents were surging. In these 2 days, Green Deer Academy had become the focus of attention of countless practitioners, and all the major forces had cast their eyes on it. A 16-year-old young spiritual rune master was going to forge a set of spiritual rune battle armor. For ordinary people, this matter might seem too remote and unreal. They only knew that the success of Lin's action was doomed to be slim. As for how unlikely it was, no one knew, because the spiritual tattoo armor was too rare. Because no one knew how difficult it was to refine it, people felt it was unreachable and couldn't believe that Lin Sun could succeed. But for some experienced bigwigs, they were very clear about how amazing the spiritual tattoo armor was. It was no exaggeration to say that even in an upper-class aristocratic family, if they could master a set of armor with spiritual tattoos, they would have the power to deter their enemies. If a lower-class aristocratic family had a suit of armor with spiritual tattoos, they could even change their situation and compete with the middle-class aristocratic families. This was the power and influence of the spiritual tattoo armor. It was said that if a practitioner of Tao Insight Realm had a suit of armor with spiritual tattoos, he could cross a big realm and compete with the practitioners of Reincarnation Developing Realm. Therefore, when people learned that Lin Sun wanted to refine this treasure, it attracted worldwide attention and set off an unprecedented sensation. Even if most people didn't believe that he could succeed, they still couldn't stop paying attention to this matter. The spiritual tattoo armor. Having one could change the pattern of a force. Who wouldn't be moved? Green Deer Academy became the eye of the storm. Russell, 9 fire Lin beasts pulled a chariot, crushing the clouds and landing in front of the gate of Green Deer Academy. The chariot was gorgeous and colorful. A middle-aged man in a purple robe walked out with his hands behind his back. He was as majestic and unshakable as a holy mountain. When he opened and closed his eyes, lightning shot out, shocking all directions. Qin Baoji, a great practitioner at the peak of Tao Insight Realm of Qi family, in the Fire Lin carriage. The practitioners who paid attention to the movement here couldn't help but be shocked. Qi Baoji, a powerful figure in the upper-class aristocratic family, was like the sun at noon. Qin Baoji entered Green Deer Academy without being stopped at all. Whoosh! A slender figure on a spirit boat floated in the sky, attracting countless people's attention. He stood straight and his clothes fluttered in the wind. Wisps of rainbow light derived from the great way appeared around him, as if he blended with heaven and earth, making people unable to see his true appearance. Marquis Baijan of Zhuo family. Some practitioners of the older generation were surprised and recognized the identity of the man. He was Zhuo Fuguang of Baijan realm, an influential figure of Tao Insight realm in the upper-class aristocratic family of Zhuo family. He was a powerful figure who had won hundreds of battles and killed hundreds of dark barbarians. All his deeds were bloody and shocking. He was given the title of Marquis Baijan by the current emperor. Many practitioners were shocked that Zhuo of Baijan realm also came. This day was destined to be turbulent in Green Deer Academy. Big shots came one after another, as if they had already agreed to come. Each of them could be called a giant with great power. Obviously, they were also attracted by the spiritual tattoo armor Lin Sun was refining. Otherwise, it was impossible to see them in the past. Rumble on the horizon, there was a rumbling sound that sounded like the beating of a drum. Banners fluttered in the wind, and guards cleared the way. 16 servants dressed in palace attire crowded around a bronze carriage like stars surrounding the moon, and they were walking over. The bronze chariot was densely covered with mountains, rivers, the sun, and the moon. It was sacred and solemn, like the arrival of a king. As soon as this group of people appeared, all the people present fell into silence and great shock. Purple gold bronze chariot. This was the chariot of Zhao Jiuxiao, the king of Xi, the only one in the entire empire. The king of Xi was a legendary and powerful lord. It was said that he had already possessed the monstrous spiritual power of reincarnation developing realm. He presided over a region with great power. And now, the prince was here as well. The purple gold bronze chariot stopped, and a thin middle-aged man in a grey robe walked out. His face was as sharp as a knife, and he was resolute and unobtrusive. But his thin body seemed to hide a volcano. Once it erupted, it was destined to burn the mountains and rivers. When these big shots came one after another, the outside world became more and more shocked and attracted unprecedented attention. Everyone speculated that they must have come for Lin Sun. In Green Deer School, the atmosphere was also unusual, especially in the spiritual tattoo yard. All the teachers and students had suspended classes, and there was no tranquility and peace in the past. Because today, big shots of the Empire arrived one after another in front of the spiritual refining tower, paying attention to the same thing, Lin Sun's spiritual refining action. In front of the spiritual refining tower, seats had already been set up for those big shots. Shen Tuo stood alone in the distance, looking at the big shots who came uninvited on the seats one after another, and he was very worried. Before, in order to resolve the action launched by a group of students to expel Lin, Shen Tuo had to leak the news in advance that Lin was going to refine the spiritual tattoo armor. It was also because of this news that the school changed its attitude and helped Lin Sun to resolve an invisible blow and revenge. But Shen Tuo didn't expect that because of leaking the news in advance, it attracted attention from all sides and made these big shots come one after another. Even the top officials of the school were alarmed and arranged for Shen Tuo to deal with this matter properly. Brother Shen Yu Beidou, a senior spiritual tattoo master of the commune of spiritual tattooists, and Qing Jing, a spiritual tattoo master of the Academy of Spiritual Implements, also came. You are also here. Shen Tuo didn't dare to let his imagination run wild and greeted them. Is Lin Sun confident in refining this time? Yu Beidou came up and asked, which immediately attracted a lot of attention. This question was the most concerned of all. You have to ask Lin Sun about this. Shen Tuo answered casually. He didn't know how many times he had been asked these days. He didn't answer perfunctorily, but he really didn't dare to make any clear answer. I understand. After all, it's the first time to refine a spiritual tattoo armor. No one can guarantee success. Yu Beidou nodded. Together with Qing Jing and Shen Tuo, he had witnessed the process of Lin Sun's certification as a spiritual tattoo master and the magnificent vision of 9 Dragons chant, so he knew better than others how amazing Lin Sun's attainments in spiritual tattoos were. But when he heard that Lin Sun was going to refine a spiritual tattoo armor, he was still shocked, so he hurried here to see it with his own eyes. Something is wrong. Why are so many people here? On the other side, Qing Jing frowned and said, Are they all here to see Lin Sun make a fool of himself? Shintuo's heart trembled and he said vaguely, "It's hard to say." In fact, he had already seen some clues. The reason why so many big shots were attracted today was definitely not just to see Lin Sun refine a spiritual weapon. At this time, there were more and more big shots in the field, each of whom had a great background. Ordinary people couldn't be qualified to attend them at all. Because this was Green Deer School, not everyone could come here as they wanted. Buzz. Suddenly, a magnificent wave came from the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower, spreading out and echoing between heaven and earth like the ringing of a bell. Suddenly, all the eyes in the field were attracted to it. The cyan furnace has been activated. It seems that the boy has started to take action. Someone whispered in the seat. This man had a thin face and sharp eyes. His long gray hair was neatly combed. He was Chu Shanha, the vice dean of Spiritual Tattoo Yard. In order to attack and retaliate against Lin Sun and help Chu Haidong, Chu Shanha had set up a trap to make Lin Sun unable to establish a foothold in Spiritual Tattoo Yard. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun finally repaired the Sword of Apocalypse of the Empress, which made Chu Shanha extremely embarrassed. In the end, Lin Sun lost his face and had to retreat temporarily and leave Spiritual Tattoo Yard. Unexpectedly, Chu Shanha also came today. If he succeeds this time, he can make amends for his mistakes, and we won't pursue him for slandering and desecrating the dignity of the royal family. If he fails, don't blame me for being rude. Next to Chu Shanha, a dignified old man said indifferently, with a touch of coldness flashing in his eyes. The old man was Zhao Zhanya, the vice dean of Martial Arts Yard. He was also a big shot in the royal family. Obviously, he didn't come here just to watch Lin Sun refine spiritual weapons. Chapter 505. Zhao Zhanya's words shocked all the people present. Obviously, the vice dean of Martial Arts Courtyard didn't believe that Lin Sun could refine the armor with spiritual tattoos at all. He came here to take this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. Haha, brother Zhao is right. Although Lin Sun is talented, he is undisciplined and unscrupulous. He has a bad conduct and a bad record. Such a talent, no matter how outstanding he is destined to be a scourge. Chu Shanha chuckled. As the vice dean of Spiritual Tattoo Courtyard, he completely denied Lin Sun. His intention was clear. This made many people keenly aware that Lin Sun's spiritual weapon refining operation might develop into a disaster against Lin Sun. Unless he could really refine the armor with spiritual tattoos, his situation would be worrying. That's right. Green Deer School is not a place to hide filth. A young man like Lin Sun who goes astray will become a scourge sooner or later if we don't punish and discipline him. On the other side, Qin Baoji, a great practitioner at the peak of Dongtian realm of Qin family, also spoke. His pupils were as cold as a sharp blade, and his momentum was oppressive. If he dares to deceive us, we will not spare him. Suddenly, a thunderous voice rumbled, which made all the people present change their expressions. It was Zhuo Fuguang, the Marquis of 100 Battles. He was surrounded by the aura of the Great Way, sitting there like a king stepping on mountains of corpses and seas of blood. For a moment, the whole place was silent. From Zhao Zhanya's words to Chu Shanha, Qin Baoji, and Zhuo Fuguang's words, everyone could see that they came for Lin Sun without any concealment at all. Shin Tuo's face was gloomy. Lin Sun just began to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos, but these big shots denied and threatened him one after another, which made him feel a chill in his heart. He realized that something was wrong. What crime did Lin Sun commit? Why do you all want to teach him a lesson regardless of your status? Suddenly, a voice sounded, which surprised all the people present. On such an occasion, someone dared to refute several big shots? A handsome and dignified young man walked over with large strides. His bearing was heroic, and he had a kind of domineering aura that looked down on the mountains and rivers. Ning Meng, the grandson of the Iron Blood King. Many people recognized the identity of the young man, and they couldn't help but look surprised. "Kid, what is this place? Is there a place for you to interrupt?" The great cultivator of the Qin clan, Qin Baoji, grunted coldly. His gaze was like a sharp blade that tore through the sky, and it was terrifying. "What a joke, this is my Green Deer Academy. Old man, you came uninvited and you dare to lecture me?" Ning Meng shouted, which made everyone tremble. This guy was too strong. Did he really think that with the power of the Blood King, he dared to look down on the Qin family? Qin Baoji's face darkened. Before he could say anything, Zhuo Fuguang, the Marquis of 100 Battles, waved his hand and said calmly, "Brother Qin, don't stoop to their level." As he said, he looked at Ning Meng faintly and said, "Little guy, why don't you know the rules at all? Is this how your parents teach you? Retreat quickly, don't make a mistake." Ning Meng was furious. "Are you saying that I have no manners?" Zhuo Fuguang frowned and said unhappily, "Lad, even your father wouldn't dare to speak like this. Do you really think we won't dare to punish you?" Rumble. An oppressive power spread out and pressed down on Ning Meng fiercely, trying to frighten him and force him to stop talking. Ning Meng's face changed. "Old man, how dare you?" Zhuo Fuguang sneered, "How dare you, young man, be so arrogant? Today, I will teach you a lesson on behalf of your parents. I will let you know the rules." As he spoke, his power was like a mountain, pressing down fiercely. This was a Marquis of 100 Battles, who had fought in the frontier and killed hundreds of important figures of alien races. His divine power was matchless, and his hands were stained with blood. It could be imagined how terrifying his power was. It was not something that a sea spirit realm could resist. "Hee, you are so powerful. Zhuo Fuguang, we haven't seen each other for many years. How dare you teach my grandson a lesson on behalf of me?" Suddenly, a thunderous shout resounded, and it shook the ears of all the cultivators present, causing them to see stars, and their expressions to change abruptly. It was just a voice, but it was like a heavy hammer that made their hearts tremble. Swish! A figure like a sacred mountain appeared in the field. His white hair was messy, and his hair was like a halberd. When his eyes opened and closed, there were terrifying visions of mountains of corpses, seas of blood, and stars sinking and moon falling. This was definitely a terrifying expert. With his arrival, the whole world was filled with a murderous aura. The void wailed and the wind and clouds surged. Everyone was shocked and looked incredulous. Blood Iron King Ning Bugue, a king who lived by fighting. Even if he died, he would rest his head on a mountain of corpses, lie in a sea of blood, and sleep with the sky and the earth. There were at least 800 masters who died in his hands, if not 1,000. He was definitely a king who killed his way out. His ferocity was matchless and his name shook the empire. It was even rumored that the 5 tiger generals of the empire combined would not be as powerful as the Blood Iron King. However, no one expected that such a legendary figure of the empire would return to the Forbidden City at this time and appear in Green Deer School. "Ning Bugue, why are you here?" Zhuo Fuguang suddenly stood up. His eyes were as sharp as blades, and he looked a little surprised. The other big shots present were also moved. Ning Bugue had been stationed in the western border of the empire for 100 years and had not returned to the Forbidden City. Why did he return this time? "What? Don't you welcome me back?" Ning Bugue's voice was rough, and his words were like thunder. He did not hide his ferocity at all, and there was a terrible momentum like a tiger that could swallow thousands of miles. "How dare we? Brother Ning, please take a seat." Zhao Zhanya stood up and said in a low voice. As the deputy dean of martial arts school and a big shot of the royal family, his status was quite high. "Humph, you guys only know how to bully the younger generation. I don't want to sit with you." As he said, he grabbed Ning Meng and sat on the ground, which shocked all the people present. This iron-blooded king, who had long been fierce and mighty, was really as overbearing as the legend said. He treated all the big shots present as nothing and didn't give them any face. Zhao Zhanya could not help but feel a trace of haze between his eyebrows. Hey, even if you come, so what? Lin Sun has made a terrible mistake. It's not enough for you to protect him. Zhuofuguang sneered. He had calmed down. Not only him, but also Chu Shanhe, Qin Baoji and some big shots who had a good relationship with them nearby thought so. Alas, Duke Daochen fought for the empire. Even though he died, his heroic spirit lives on forever, and he receives the reverence of all. I never imagined that only a few years have passed. The only child left behind by Duke Daochen has become a thorn in the side of some people. It's truly disappointing. At this time, someone let out a long sigh. Although the sound was not loud, it clearly rang in everyone's ears. An extremely fat and huge middle-aged man walked over slowly. From a distance, he looked like a hill moving horizontally, which was extremely eye-catching. The owner of Keystone Business, Fortune Godshire. All the people present opened their eyes wide. The famous Fortune Godshire was also here today, and from his tone, it was obvious that he was here to support Lin Sun. The faces of Zhao Zhanya, Chu Shanhe, Zhuofuguang and Qin Baoji turned gloomy. They did not expect that not only would Ning Bugui appear out of nowhere, but another god of fortune would also appear. Brother Shi, come and sit down. It's not easy to catch you. Let's have a good talk. Ning Bugui said with a smile. Fortune god Shi suddenly laughed and was not polite. His huge body, which was like a mountain, sat down next to him. At this time, people saw Shi Yu behind Fortune god Shi. The reason why they did not notice him just now was that Fortune god Shi's body was too fat. Like a hill, many people were thoughtful. They knew that Shi Yu, Ning Meng and Lin Sun were friends. The appearance of Ning Bugui and Fortune god Shi today must have something to do with them. The situation was a bit delicate. Some people wanted to target Lin Sun, and some wanted to protect him. It was just a refining operation, but it set off a silent storm and a surging undercurrent. Lord Daochen was a hero who was admired by countless people in the empire. I also admire him very much. But I never thought that his descendants were so unbearable and did so many bad deeds that angered God and people. If they are not disciplined, they will only tarnish Lord Daochen's prestige and bring shame to Lin family. Zhao Zhanya said with no expression. Even if Ning Bugui and Fortune god Shi came, they could not change his mind. What do you mean by angering God and people? Why do I hear that some people have been secretly targeting and suppressing Lin Sun since he entered the Forbidden City? I think someone doesn't want Lord Daochen's bloodline to live in the world. Along with the conversation, two figures appeared in the field again. One was a middle-aged man with black hair and broad eyebrows. He was majestic and powerful. The other was a thin and short old man with a goatee and a smile on his face. He seemed amiable and didn't have any imposing aura to speak of. However, when they saw the two of them enter the arena, a wave of restlessness arose in the surroundings, and they were endlessly surprised and bewildered. That was because the middle-aged man with black hair and beard was the overlord of the East Sea, the king of the East Sea, Yi Qingtian. The other old man with a goatee was Gong Bupo, the first elder of the Tumbler family. Perhaps the young people didn't have a deep understanding of their reputations, but to the great figures present, these two were ferocious figures that caused others to fear them. They'd made a name for themselves many years ago, and they reigned supreme over an area. There was no doubt that Yi Qi and Gong Ming were following Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo. At this point, everyone could see that Blood King Ning Bugui, Fortune god Shi, King of Donghai Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo were all here to protect Lin Sun. This shocked people, and made them feel that the situation was getting more and more delicate. It seemed that they were incompatible and in conflict with each other. Even Zhao Zhanya and Chu Shanhe frowned at this time. They felt it was a little tricky. They didn't expect that they would attract so many fierce characters just to deal with a surviving member of Lin family. The refining has just begun. Why are you so competitive? Let's observe quietly. A 16-year-old boy is going to refine a suit of spiritual tattoos. This kind of thing is rare since ancient times. Amidst this deathly silent and tense atmosphere, a light sigh resounded. A middle-aged man with a face as sharp as a knife, dressed in a gray robe, and had an oppressive and firm appearance had unknowingly appeared on the scene. He seemed inconspicuous, but everyone had an illusion that there was a volcano hidden in his thin body, which would erupt at any time and burn the mountains and rivers. Suddenly, Zhao Zhanye, Chu Shanhe, Ning Bugue, Fortune Godshur, and all the big shots present stood up at the same time and didn't dare to sit there anymore. This was a kind of power that only belonged to Zhao Jiuxiao, the Sea Conqueror. Chapter 506. As soon as Zhao Jiuxiao appeared, all the big shots present stood up to greet him. His power was like the sun and the moon illuminating the mountains and rivers, which shocked everyone present. At this point, the disputes in the field were silently suppressed. Zhao Zhanye and Chu Shanhe all looked relaxed because Zhao Jiuxiao was also from the imperial family, which was equivalent to being in the same camp as them. But Blood King Ning Bugue and Fortune Godshur all frowned and remained silent. In the following time, some big shots arrived one after another, such as the superior aristocratic Hua clan, Song clan, Qi clan, and so on. As soon as they arrived, they were warmly welcomed by Zhao Zhanye and Chu Shanhe. Now they all knew that Lin Sun had also offended these clans. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Zhao Zhanye naturally would not miss such an opportunity to win over friends. In this regard, Ning Bugue and Fortune Godshur still remained silent, but everyone could see that the resistance would only be greater and greater if they wanted to protect Lin Sun. In fact, the development of the situation to this point was completely beyond the expectation of most people present. Because this was the first day of Lin Sun's refining. Even if everyone thought that his chances of success this time were very slim, no one dared to be sure that Lin Sun would fail. Under such circumstances, it was very abnormal that Zhao Zhanye, Chu Shanhe, Zhou Fuguang and Qin Baoji took action aggressively to suppress Lin Sun. Weren't they worried that if Lin Sun succeeded, it would embarrass them? Or were they absolutely sure that Lin Sun's refining operation was doomed to end in failure? This was shocking. If it was the second case, then it proved that Zhao Zhanye and others came prepared this time. This was also what Ning Bugue and Fortune Godshur were worried about. Zhao Zhanye and others were too confident and had a posture of winning. If Lin Sun failed, the consequences would be very serious. Master Shin Tuo, how sure do you think Lin Sun is this time? Fortune Godshur transmitted a voice to Shin Tuo. I can't make a prediction. Shin Tuo suddenly smiled bitterly. How could he dare to answer this question with certainty? It seems that the situation is not good. Fortune Godshur pondered. It depends on the situation. As far as I know, it will take at least 1 month to refine a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos. No matter what the final result is, I will go all out this time to save the only seedling left by Duke Daochen. Blood King Ning Bugue's voice was firm and determined. Of course, he was sending a telepathic message to Fortune Godshur, Yi Qingtian, and Gong Bu Po. He was not worried that others would hear him. On the other side, Zhao Zhanye also transmitted his voice. This time, we have gathered a large number of people to come here, and we have already received attention from all sides. All eyes are on us, and I do not wish for any unforeseen events to occur. Chu Shanhe suddenly smiled, full of confidence. Brother Zhao, don't worry. Even if this boy has the means to refine spiritual tattoo armor, he is doomed to lose. Zhao Zhanye squinted at Chu Shanhe and nodded. Then I'm relieved. Lin Sun has a special identity. We can't allow him to grow up. Otherwise, it will be a disaster for our empire. As time went by, more than 10 days had passed in a flash. In the 9th floor of the spiritual refining tower, the furnace roared constantly, and waves of fluctuations spread. From time to time, colorful and dazzling light could be seen rushing out, like a divine rainbow, which was comparable to a miracle. Such a scene also caused a lot of uproar in the field these days. There were endless discussions about it, and even some spiritual tattooists joined in to analyze and explain the scene. Look, it's the smelting stage now. To refine a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos, smelting spiritual materials is an extremely crucial step. As we all know, each spiritual material is unique and full of spirituality. It is extremely difficult to completely melt them into a furnace and turn them into a tool embryo. That's right. In history, many spiritual rune masters failed at this step. The reason was that they couldn't smelt a perfect spirit tool embryo. Many big shots listened with relish, and someone couldn't help asking, "Masters, can you see whether Lin Sun can refine a perfect tool embryo this time?" At present, there seems to be no problem. It depends on whether he can control the smelting step in the following time. On this point alone, Lin Sun's performance has exceeded my expectation. It was Yu Beidu, a senior spiritual tattooist from the headquarters of the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, who spoke, which caused a lot of exclamations in the field and increased their confidence in Lin Sun's refining this time. After all, according to Yu Beidu, it was already amazing and extremely difficult for a young spiritual tattooist like Lin Sun to achieve this step. But in this exclamation, Chu Shan has sneered, "Haha, I don't think so. If I'm right, it's impossible for Lin Sun to smelt a perfect tool embryo at this stage." This surprised all the people present. Chu Shanha came from the Chu family, one of the 3 major spiritual tattooist families, and he was also the deputy dean of the spiritual tattoo yard and a senior spiritual tattooist. Did he have some clues since he dared to make such a clear statement at this moment? This old guy is really mean. Ning Meng was angry. Last time Lin Sun repaired the sword of apocalypse of the Empress, which embarrassed the old guy and made him lose his face. He naturally wants Lin to fail this time. Sure, you frowned and said, "This old guy needs to be taught a lesson." At that time, there was no one in the entire spiritual tattoo yard who could repair the sword of apocalypse. Only Lin Sun did this step, which was undoubtedly a great help to him. But he didn't appreciate it and deliberately targeted and suppressed Lin Sun with others. It's really disgusting. Yi Chi looked gloomy. "Brother Chu, do you have any basis for this?" Even Shen Tuo was a little displeased and questioned Chu Shanha. "Humph, since I dare to say so, I must have noticed something wrong. If you don't believe me, just wait and see." Chu Shanha snorted and didn't bother to explain. He seemed to be fearless and confident, which made everyone in the field suspicious. Was Lin Sun going to fail this time in the smelting stage? This was not good. Boom. As if to confirm Chu Shanha's words, an explosion-like roar suddenly sounded on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Soon after, the light that filled the sky dimmed, and the divine rainbows shattered, turning into a rain of light. Not long after, the entire 9th floor of the Spirit Refinement Pagoda fell into silence. There was no longer the rumbling of the cauldron, and there were no more dazzling scenes. All the people present were shocked and opened their eyes wide. How could this be? Is he really going to fail at this step? Shin Tuo's heart trembled and his face suddenly changed. Even spiritual tattoo masters like Yu Beidu and Qing Jing were shocked and couldn't believe it. Did he fail? Ha ha, what did I say just now? Didn't it come true? Chu Shanha laughed. I have said that Lin Sun has no ability to refine armors with spiritual tattoos at all. All the people present looked sideways and talked about it. Many people felt sorry for Lin Sun, and some people gloated and sneered. Ning Bugue and Fortune God sure all looked dignified. Although they knew that Lin Sun had little hope of success this time, they still couldn't believe that Lin Sun would fail at the smelting stage. Well, go and invite the big shots here. Lin Sun's defeat is inevitable. It's time to settle old scores with him. Chu Shanhe gave the order with the look of a winner. These days, some big shots left and some big shots came. With their status, it was impossible for them to wait here bitterly. Zhao Jiuxiao, the Lord of Zhenhai, and Zhao Zhanye, the Vice Dean of Martial Arts Yard, had left a few days ago. The atmosphere was dead silent for a while. Did Lin Sun fail? Ning Meng and sure you couldn't accept this result, but for those big shots who were hostile to Lin Sun, this was undoubtedly the best ending. When those bigwigs returned to the field, Lin Sun was doomed to suffer. Shin Tuo's face also became gloomy, and he murmured, "How could this be? With his ability, smelting embryos is not difficult for him at all." Did some accident happen before long? Zhao Jiuxiao, Zhao Zhanye, Zhou Fuguang, Qin Baoji and other big shots arrived one after another, making the atmosphere more and more mysterious. Alas, I didn't expect that he failed. Zhao Jiuxiao, the Lord of Zhenhai, sighed. His attitude was the most intriguing. It seemed that he came purely to watch a refining operation without any other purpose. But as long as one thought about his identity, as a big shot in the imperial family, it was impossible for him to help Lin Sun. Zhao Zhanye, Chu Shanhe and others all smiled. This result made them completely relieved. Next, they only needed to consider how to deal with Lin Sun. Lin Sun, since you have failed, come out and face the reality. Chu Shanhe shouted, and his voice was like thunder, resounding through the world. This damn old thing. Can't wait to deal with Lin Sun? Ning Meng was furious. Sure you and others all frowned and worried. There was no doubt that this was the worst result. If they wanted to protect Lin Sun later, there would be many twists and turns and difficulties. It could be seen from the looks of Zhao Zhanye and Chu Shanhe that they would never let go of this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun. For a while, the atmosphere in the field was tense to the extreme. Everyone had a premonition that a storm against Lin Sun was coming. Since he entered the Forbidden City, he had offended many great forces, such as Hua family, Song family, Qi family, Zhou family, Qin family, Chu family and the imperial family. Today, almost all the forces of these great forces gathered here. Obviously, they were going to settle accounts with Lin Sun together. Lin Sun was doomed. This was the hunch of everyone present. Even if Ning Bugue and Fortune God sure tried to stop him, they might not be able to protect him. Lin Sun, are you afraid? If you don't come out, don't blame me for sending someone to invite you out. Chu Shanhe shouted with a cold look. He emphasized the word invite, which was full of threat. Damn it! Ning Meng and Sure Yu gritted their teeth secretly. Chu Shanhe had gone too far. Everyone looked at each other, but no one dared to stop Chu Shanhe. In this tense atmosphere, Lin Sun's calm voice sounded in the field. Chapter 507. Everyone was dumbfounded by his words. Why did Lin Sun still dare to challenge Chu Shanhe at this time? At this time, people finally saw clearly that Lin Sun was standing on the top of the spiritual refining tower. His figure was straight and his clothes were fluttering in the wind. It seemed that he was overlooking all living beings. Little guy, why don't you get down and admit your guilt? Chu Shanhe's face darkened and he shouted. These words were too impolite. It seemed that he wanted to suppress Lin Sun and punish him. Old bastard, can you afford the consequences of delaying my refining? Lin Sun's counterattack was equally impolite. In front of so many big shots, he directly scolded Chu Shanhe as an old bastard, which shocked all the people present. They murmured in their hearts that this guy was really as bold as the legend said. Bastard, you have failed in refining, but you still don't repent. Instead, you dare to contradict me. Do you really think we dare not punish you? Chu Shanhe was so angry that his face was livid, and his eyes were murderous. Lin Sun, we won't allow you to make trouble today. Come down quickly and wait for punishment. Zhao Zhanye said coldly. His pupils were full of cold electricity, which was frightening. Young man, don't struggle anymore. You should have seen the situation clearly. Don't force us to catch you by ourselves. Zhou Fuguang, Marquis of 100 Battles, said murderously. Next to him, Qin Baoji, Chu Shanhe and others also looked unkind. They looked at Lin Sun as if he was dead. If it weren't for Green Deer School, they would have already taken action and suppressed Lin Sun. Lin Sun, you have failed. If you confess your guilt now, you may have a chance to live. Come down quickly. Some big shots from Hua family, Song family and Qi family also shouted. For a moment, Lin Sun became a sinner condemned by thousands of people, filling the atmosphere with a sense of mutual hostility. Many people sighed in their hearts. No matter how evil Lin Sun was, he would not be able to turn the situation around today. Ning Meng, sure you and others were so angry that they gritted their teeth. These old guys were really bullies. What did they think of Lin Sun? A sinner? Guys, you are too impatient, aren't you? Your father wants to see who dares to bully Duke Daochun's descendant today. Suddenly, the Blood King, Ning Bugue, stood up. His pupils emitted cold electricity, and his iron-blooded murderous aura soared into the sky, causing many people's expressions to change. What crime did Lin Sun commit to make you dislike him so much? Fortune God sure also sighed and stood up. His figure was huge, like a hill rising from the ground, giving people an indescribable pressure. On the other side, Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo also rose to their feet. Their expressions were indifferent as they glanced at Zhao Zhanye, Chu Shanhe, and the others from afar. Instantly, the situation in the surroundings became even more tense. The air seemed as if it had frozen, and it caused everyone to be unable to catch their breath. These were all great characters that could shake an entire region, and there was no lack of giant-level existences with frightening technique. At this moment, they were confronting each other. This invisible pressure was like a volcano that was about to erupt, causing everyone to shiver in fear. One side wanted to suppress Lin Sun, and the other side wanted to protect Lin Sun. The situation was very clear, and it depended on the final result. What crime? This boy's misdeeds are obvious to all in the world. He is comparable to a scourge. If we don't suppress him today, he will definitely poison the world and bring disaster to the world in the future. Zhao Zhanye snorted coldly. He was not afraid of Ning Bugue, Fortune Godshire, and the others at all. Lin Sun, since you have failed in refining spiritual weapons, hurry up and come down. It's time to put an end to what happened today. At the same time, Chu Shanhe's eyes were as sharp as a blade, coldly staring at Lin Sun. Until now, Lin Sun was still standing on the top of the spiritual cultivation tower, looking down at them. This attitude made him furious. Lin Sun, come down. Today, I will protect you at the cost of my life. Ning Bugue said indifferently, and his momentum became more and more terrifying. As a king who had fought on the battlefield for hundreds of years and trampled on the corpses of countless enemies, his resolute statement this time moved all the people present. Come down. Although I am unbearable, I will never tolerate you being wronged. Even Shen Tuo spoke out, which surprised many people. They didn't expect that Lin Sun, the only son of Lin family with little power, could get so much support. Humph! Zhao Zhanye snorted coldly. He was very dissatisfied with this. But no matter what, they would never let go of this opportunity to suppress Lin Sun today. They must completely kill him before he rose. At the top of the spiritual cultivation tower, Lin Sun looked down at the big shots in the field and glanced over them one by one. When he saw Ning Bugue, Fortune Godshire, and the others, he couldn't help feeling warm in his heart. He did not expect that he would be protected by these elders at this time. When his eyes swept over Zhao Zhanye, Chu Shanhe, and the others, his pupils had become indifferent and cold, without concealing his hostility. Finally, he smiled slightly, showing his snow-white teeth, and said, "When I finish refining the armor with spiritual tattoos, I will stand in front of you and ask you why you punish me." His words were calm and indifferent, but it shocked all the people present. Didn't he fail in refining spiritual weapons? Why did he say so? Zhao Zhanye could not help but be stunned. He frowned slightly and transmitted his voice. Brother Chu, what's going on? Chu Shanhe was also a little surprised, and then he said flatly, it's impossible. He can't succeed. He must be bluffing and struggling at the last moment. Ning Bugue, Fortune Godshur, and Shin Tua were also a little confused. They all saw that Lin Sun did not seem to be joking. Could it be that, as he said, the refining did not fail? Master Shin Tua, do you see anything? Ning Bugue couldn't help asking. It's only been more than 10 days, and the abnormalities just now all show that there was an accident in the smelting of the embryo. I really don't understand the situation. Shin Tua frowned tightly. As a senior spiritual tattooist, he still couldn't figure out the situation, which made Ning Bugue and the others more confused. What on earth did Lin Sun want to do? At this moment, everyone in the field was also confused. Lin Sun, do you still want to fool us? You should know that even if you delay, you can't change your situation. Chu Shanhe shouted. Old man, you are a spiritual tattooist. How dare you talk so shamelessly before you figure out the situation? You really lose the face of spiritual tattooist. Lin Sun was not polite to Chu Shanhe at all. But as soon as he said this, the spiritual tattooists in the field looked at each other. Was there really any mystery in this refining that they didn't see through? Chu Shanhe was so angry that he laughed. Ha ha ha, well, I'd like to see what tricks you are going to play. He was very sure in his heart that Lin Sun had no power at all, because long before Lin started to refine spiritual weapons, he had secretly done something to the cyan sky furnace on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. He forcibly erased a formation pattern inside the furnace. Even a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos would not be able to melt the embryo of the spiritual weapon successfully. Since he couldn't refine the embryo, how could he refine the armor with spiritual tattoos? Wishful thinking. This was where Chu Shanhe's confidence came from. It was also because of this that he dared to invite big shots such as Zhao Zhanye, Zhou Fuguang, and Qin Baoji to suppress Lin Sun. I'm afraid that even if the stove is intact, it's impossible for you, a little bastard, to refine the armor with spiritual tattoos. Chu Shanhe sneered secretly. But in the next moment, he frowned. What is this brat doing? Not only Chu Shanhe, but also all the people present at this time were attracted to the top of the spiritual cultivation tower. Lin Sun's clothes were fluttering, his black hair was flying, and his thin and handsome figure was standing there quietly with his hands behind his back, as if waiting for something. Occasionally, he would look up at the sky. Who knows what he is doing? Someone asked, but got no answer, because even the spiritual tattooists present were confused at the moment. What is he doing? He's just playing tricks. Chu Shanhe sneered. Boom. However, before he could finish speaking, an earth-shattering thunderclap suddenly resounded in the clear blue sky. It was so sudden that all the people present were shocked, especially Chu Shanhe, who was trembling all over and his ears were buzzing. His face suddenly became surprised. What was this? In an instant, the sky was replaced by a layer of inky darkness. Thick clouds covered the sky, casting a shadow over the land. An indescribable oppressive aura also spread between heaven and earth, which made all the practitioners present change their expressions. Thunder retribution? Was Lin Sun going to cross the thunder retribution to break through the realm? This was too unexpected. Didn't he want to refine spiritual weapons? Why did he attract the thunder retribution? Boom! Suddenly, in the sky, purple lightning, like a thick chain, danced and rolled wildly. The lightning was dazzling, cutting through the sky and earth, filled with the supreme pressure of heaven and earth, shocking the world. That was a kind of destructive aura, enough to make all spirits tremble and feel despair. It was really the thunder retribution. At this moment, Ning Bugue, Fortune Godshur, Yi Qingtian, Gong Bupo, and other famous figures couldn't help but narrow their eyes. They all saw that this thunder retribution was not a trivial matter. It was so rare that it was not like the thunder retribution of a sea spirit realm practitioner. Damn it, at this time, this little thing still, Chu Shanha shouted angrily. However, he had only spoken halfway when he was shocked by a shocking scene, and he stood there in a daze. Lin Sun waved his sleeves. With a buzzing sound, a silver spear as clear as snow suddenly rose into the sky and appeared in the thunder punishment in the sky. Crack! Crack! Streaks of thick, chain-like purple thunderbolts immediately struck down and blasted on the clear, snow-white silver spear, emitting an incomparably ear-piercing rumbling sound. The most shocking thing was that the silver spear seemed to be psychic. Mysterious formations rose on its surface one after another, reflecting the sun, moon, mountains and rivers, Kuei Nyo galloping, immortal clouds surging, and other strange phenomena, which fought against the purple thunder retribution in the sky. All of a sudden, all the practitioners present were stunned, and their hearts were drowned by an indescribable shock. It was a weapon that was crossing the thunder retribution. Chapter 508. Everyone's eyes widened in disbelief. They thought that Lin Sun was going to break through to the next realm because of the sudden thunder punishment, which made many people speechless. Why did Lin Sun always do something unexpected at such a critical moment? But never had they imagined that they'd all guessed wrongly. This tribulation lightning was entirely caused by the spear that was bright and clear like snow. A weapon undergoing tribulation? Who had ever seen such a shocking thing? Everyone was dumbfounded. Even those spiritual tattooists were dumbfounded at the moment, trembling all over. On the one hand, they were shocked by the horrible power of the thunder tribulation. On the other hand, it reminded them of some legendary things. It was said that when some psychic treasures were born, they would suffer from the fear of God and be killed by the thunder punishment, which prevented them from appearing in the world. However, this kind of rumor was extremely old. Until now, there were very few people who had actually personally witnessed such a rare occurrence in the world. Therefore, many spiritual tattooists had already subconsciously thought that it was a rumor after all. Maybe it was just a fantasy and could not happen at all. But now, the scene in front of them was like a blow to the head, which completely shocked these spiritual tattooists. They guessed that the so-called rumor was very likely to be true. No wonder Lin Sun is so confident. It turns out that he has been waiting for this moment. That spear is the armor with spiritual tattoos. He is going to refine this time. Shintuo's eyes were shining, and his voice was full of excitement. As early as before, he had told Lin Sun that the armor with spiritual tattoos he was going to refine this time was a spear, which was specially made for an old servant on heart-cleansing peak of Lin family. At this time, a silver spear swept through the sky and fought fiercely with the purple thunder punishment. It reflected all kinds of mysterious formations and was dazzling. Wasn't it the treasure Lin Sun wanted to refine? This boy is too calm. Ning Bugue snorted coldly, but his eyes were filled with admiration. He was also shocked by this scene. He could naturally tell that a weapon that could trigger a thunder trial of heaven and earth was destined to be an extremely powerful armor with spiritual inscriptions. Fortune Godshur, Yi Qingtian, Gong Bu Po, and the others deeply agreed as well. This scene was too shocking and rare, causing their hearts to sway, and it was difficult for them to maintain their calm. Crack! Crack! In the sky, dazzling purple lightning surged, the sound reverberating in all directions. The destructive aura of the calamity shrouded Green Deer Academy in an incomparably oppressive atmosphere. On the other hand, amidst this terrifying tribulation lightning, the spear was imposing like a dragon and suffused with a silver radiance. The markings on its surface surged like tidewater, flickered, rumbled, and revealed various unbelievable phenomena. Everyone was stunned. Not only the people present, but the entire Green Deer Academy and all living beings within 1,000 miles were all stunned. This was a lightning tribulation. This was a catastrophe of the armors with spiritual tattoos. Throughout the world and throughout the history of the Empire, who had ever seen such a phenomenon? It was a miracle! How is this possible? The corners of Chu Shanha's lips trembled, and his eyes were blank. He stood there as if he had seen a ghost. Before, he vowed to punish and suppress Lin Sun with no fear. But now, he was panicking. Everything that was happening in front of him was completely out of his expectations. It was as if something impossible was happening right in front of him. Didn't you say that this matter was foolproof? Zhao Zhanya's icy cold and gloomy voice resounded in his ears, causing Chu Shanha to shudder. He turned around and saw Zhao Zhanya's expression was extremely gloomy, and the space between his brows was filled with rage. This is absolutely impossible! Chu Shanha shouted. He was going crazy. Everything was out of his control, which made his face livid. Humph! A cold snort sounded, which made Chu Shanha notice that Zhou Fuguang and Qin Baoji were also glancing at him coldly, which made Chu Shanha more and more frightened. How could this be? When Lin Sun was refining, the step of smelting the embryo of the weapon had obviously failed. When did he refine the spear? What was more, it had only been more than 10 days. In the past, even if a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos took at least a month to refine a piece of armors with spiritual tattoos, how could Lin Sun finish it in such a short time? Moreover, this spear had attracted a shocking lightning tribulation. Boom! In the sky, the lightning tribulation surged and became more and more terrible. Chu Shanha was so shocked that he was sweating all over, and his face was unspeakably ugly and livid, as if he had eaten a dead child. You put us in a passive position. Zhao Zhanya's face was cold. Chu Shanha was so aggrieved that he almost coughed up blood. The most desperate thing was that he still couldn't figure out how Lin Sun could do this. In fact, not only Chu Shanha, but also those spiritual tattooists present were surprised and confused. In just more than 10 days, Lin Sun had refined a piece of armors with spiritual tattoos that could attract lightning tribulation, which had almost never happened in the past years of the Empire. This time, it's really the right choice to come here. Zhao Jiuxiao, the king of Sea calming in the center, sighed with emotion. His eyes were like a pair of rainbows, tearing the void and staring at the depths of the lightning tribulation. He could clearly feel how extraordinary and psychic the silver spear was. It was also the first time for him to see such a strange phenomenon, so he couldn't imagine what kind of magical weapon this treasure would transform into if it could successfully resolve this tribulation. The lightning tribulation shocked everyone present and attracted the attention of many people in the dark. They were all waiting to see whether this spear could finally resolve the tribulation and exist in the world. But in any case, this alone was enough to make Lin Sun famous and his name completely resound in the world of spiritual tattooists and be known by all the practitioners in the world. I knew that Lin Sun wouldn't suffer a loss. Ning Meng laughed and beamed with joy. It seems that we worry for nothing. Sure, you said quietly. Yi Qi and Gong Ming looked at each other and couldn't help laughing. At this time, on the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower, Lin Sun still put his hands behind his back and looked up at the sky. His handsome figure was dyed with a layer of purple lightning, which made him look dreamy and mysterious. No one noticed that there was a touch of relief between his eyebrows, and no one knew how much pressure he had been under before. In the past 10 days, he almost didn't eat, drink, or sleep, and devoted all his energy and efforts to refining this long spear. There were several times during the process that he almost failed at the last moment. It was extremely thrilling. In particular, the cyan cauldron lacked a key formation tattoo, which almost made him fail completely when he smelted spiritual materials and refined the embryo of the weapon. Fortunately, he finally used a secret method he learned from the flowing light spiritual tattoo and resolved the crisis. Flowing Light Spiritual Tattoo was the first test of Green Cloud Path in the Heaven Accessing place. It not only enabled Lin Sun to master the meditating magic, but also to comprehend the secret of another spiritual tattoo from the Flowing Light Spiritual Tattoo, which enabled Lin Sun to make up for the defect of the cyan cauldron at the critical moment. Otherwise, he was doomed to fail this time. It was also this accident that alerted Lin Sun. He realized that the cyan cauldron must have been sabotaged by someone who deliberately targeted him. Now, he didn't even need to guess to know that it must be Chu Shanhe who played tricks in the dark. Only he, the deputy dean of the spiritual tattoo yard, could enter the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower without being noticed. Finally, I'm going to succeed, Master Lu. If you are still alive, you will be happy for me when you hear the news. Lin Sun looked up at the sky, with a rare touch of sadness on his handsome face. This was the first time in his life that he refined a suit of spiritual tattoos, and he used the secret method Master Lu once used. Heaven-forbidden secret method. This was a secret method of refining a suit of spiritual tattoos, a taboo of seizing heaven. It was extremely obscure and terrible. It was recorded in the animal skin note. Although the notes were long gone, the inheritance and knowledge in them had long been branded in Lin Sun's mind, and he had never forgotten any of them. It was not until now that Lin Sun realized that although he had made many dazzling achievements in spiritual tattoos, Master Lu was behind all of them. Only then did he realize that Master Lu had unknowingly given and influenced him too much. Unfortunately, since they parted that year, Master Lu's life and death were still unknown. Clang! Suddenly, a dragon-like roar of a spear resounded through the sky, clear and impassioned. The silver spear shone brightly, illuminating the mountains and rivers. With a slight shake, it emitted a dazzling light, which forcibly tore apart the tribulation clouds and made them disappear. At this point, the thunder tribulation came to an end, leaving only a long spear floating in the air. The spear was about 3 meters long, translucent like ice and snow. The mysterious patterns of formations on it reflected the vision of heaven and earth, just like a spiritual miracle. That scene was too amazing. The spear glowed with an indescribable power, shocking the soul, with a sharpness that could pierce the sky. Everyone revealed expressions of infatuation, and their minds swayed. What sort of peerless, precious treasure was this? The aura that flowed out from it actually caused one's mind to tremble? Clatter, the silver spear was changing, and its surface was suffused with rays of light that were like tidewater. The bright silver luster was gradually restrained, and it turned into a boundless dark gray color. It had an ancient and natural aura, and its might was even more shocking. It could be clearly seen that the void around it was collapsing inch by inch, wailing constantly, as if it could not bear the unspeakable pressure. A spear, manifested through the thunder tribulation, reflected in the world. The whole audience was silent and everyone was shocked. At this time, Lin Sun suddenly turned around and looked down at the big shots from the top of the spiritual refining tower. Finally, his eyes fell on Chu Shanhe. "Old guy, may I ask if I failed in refining?" His voice was indifferent and calm, and it resounded clearly amidst this deathly silent atmosphere, causing the bodies of everyone to shake and return to their senses. Chu Shanhe's face had become extremely gloomy, aggrieved, unwilling and frustrated. He knew that it was impossible to suppress Lin Sun today. Chapter 509. Chu Shanhe looked embarrassed and speechless. He was so aggrieved that his lungs were about to explode. Hearing Lin Sun's questioning, Zhao Zhanye and Chu Shanhe didn't look any better. From the first day when Lin Sun started to refine spiritual weapons, they threatened to punish him severely and regarded him as the scourge of the empire. They mobilized a large number of people to condemn him. Today, they thought that Lin Sun was bound to fail, so they were ready to take the initiative and suppress Lin Sun in one fell swoop. But unexpectedly, at the most critical moment, A set of armor with spiritual tattoos that could survive the thunder tribulation appeared out of nowhere. It disturbed the situation all of a sudden. Under such circumstances, who dared to blame Lin Sun? He was a master of spiritual tattoos, who could refine a suit of spiritual tattoos. The most terrible thing was that he was only 16 years old, and had infinite potential. He had achieved this step alone. No one in the world could compare with him. Daochen, you have a successor. Blood King Ningbugue sighed with emotion. Many people agreed with him. Today, Lin Sun was destined to shine brightly. It was hard to stop his rise. For the Empire, the value of such a young master of spiritual tattoos was absolutely beyond imagination. Anyone who dared to hurt him should really think about the consequences. Shen Tua, Yu Beidu, and Qing Jing, these masters of spiritual tattoos, were even more excited. They looked at Lin Sun as if they were looking at a rare treasure, which could melt people. They wanted to know how terrifying Lin Sun's potential was. He was only 16 years old, and in less than a month, he had refined a suit of spiritual tattoos alone. In the past years of the Empire, no one could be mentioned in the same breath as Lin Sun. He was absolutely unparalleled in the world and unparalleled in both ancient and modern times. The most incredible thing was that the armor with spiritual tattoos Lin Sun made for the first time attracted a thunder test. It was like a miracle, full of incredible flavor. If it weren't for the occasion, Shen Tua and others would have rushed up and humbly asked Lin Sun how he did it. It was amazing. Lin Sun's performance today could be recorded in the history of the Empire and become the most dazzling star in the world of spiritual tattooists. The atmosphere was eerily silent. No one could calm down. They were unable to completely recover from the shock just now. In the sky, a boundless dark gray spear revolved as it floated in the air. It was simple and natural, and it was suffused with a terrifying aura that terrified the soul, causing even space to collapse from the pressure. Lin Sun's tall and handsome figure stood at the top of the spiritual cultivation tower. The long spear above his head hummed as he overlooked the big shots below. Everyone's gaze towards him had changed, and they carried a complicated expression. There was shock, fanaticism, bewilderment, and bewilderment. Indeed, no one could have imagined that such a delicate and pretty youth would actually create an unprecedented miracle today. Suddenly, a burst of applause rang out, and it was quite eye-catching in this silent atmosphere. Zhao Zhanya, the vice dean of martial arts courtyard, clapped his hands and praised, "Not bad, not bad. I've already said that if you can refine a suit of spiritual tattoo this time, you can make up for your mistake. Now it seems that you really didn't let me down." Everyone was stunned, and their expressions became strange. It should be known that it was because of Zhao Zhanya's presence that he united a group of big shots to suppress Lin Sun, wishing to kill Lin Sun on the spot. But now, he changed his attitude and praised Lin Sun as a senior, which surprised many people. There were also many people who realized that Zhao Zhanya had realized that something was wrong with the situation and changed his attitude to avoid embarrassing himself. "Bah! Shameless old thing, you change your face faster than a dog." Ning Meng and Sure Yu cursed in their hearts. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but be stunned. He said with a faint smile, "Why do I remember that someone regarded me as a scourge and wanted to get rid of me?" "Lin Sun, don't be complacent. Isn't it just refining a suit of spiritual tattoo? It's already merciful to let you make up for your mistake." Zuofuguang scolded coldly. Lin Sun's eyes suddenly showed a touch of coldness. "Since you said so, I'd like to ask you, what crime did I commit? Who do you think you are? How dare you convict me?" His voice was sonorous and shook the world, shocking all the people present. Yu Zuofuguang's eyes were full of cold light and killing intent. He regarded it as a provocation to be contradicted by a junior like Lin Sun in public. "What? You want to fight me if you can't say it? If I remember correctly, this is Green Deer School. How dare you, an outsider, come here and behave atrociously. Who gave you the courage? Lin Sun's counterattack was not polite. Zhuafuguang was so angry that he almost lost control of his killing intent. Just then, Zhao Zhanya suddenly sighed. Well, that's it. I'll keep this spiritual spear for the time being. Take it as the price you have to pay for your mistake. As he spoke, he suddenly stretched out his arm and grabbed towards the spear that floated in the sky. All the people present were stunned. He wanted to seize the result of Lin Sun's refining. Moreover, he was so aggressive that he didn't ask for Lin Sun's consent at all. It was extremely overbearing. How dare you? Lin Sun didn't expect that Zhao Zhanya would be so shameless. At this time, he was still thinking about the treasure he had refined. However, when Lin Sun wanted to stop him, it was too late. As the deputy dean of martial arts yard, Zhao Zhanya was a great practitioner who had already stepped into the reincarnation developing realm. Once he took action, how could Lin Sun stop him? What's more, his unexpected attack caught everyone unprepared, which was equivalent to seizing the first opportunity. Not to mention Lin Sun, even Blood King Ningbugue and Fortune Godshur had no time to stop him when they realized what was going on. In the blink of an eye, a huge hand condensed from dazzling spiritual light appeared in the sky and grabbed toward the spear. At this moment, Zhao Zhanya couldn't help but smile. Lin Sun was just a little guy who was still wet behind the ears. How ignorant and fearless he was. At the same time, he was also very excited. The long spear survived the thunder test, which was too extraordinary. Even in the ranks of spiritual tattoo armors, it could be regarded as rare, which made him extremely excited. If he didn't take this opportunity to occupy this treasure, it would be a waste of his painstaking efforts. When did the rules of Green Deer School start to be broken and trampled on by our own people? But at this moment, an old and indifferent voice rang out. Boom! The big hand that grabbed the long spear exploded like a piece of paper, and a rain of light swirled. Zhao Zhanya let out a muffled groan. His figure shook, his cheeks suddenly turned pale, and a trace of blood flowed uncontrollably from the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, when they heard the aged and indifferent voice, the figures of all the great figures in the surroundings stiffened while a chill ran down their spines. They felt an indescribable pressure descend upon them, and it pressed down upon them, causing them to feel almost suffocated. Immediately, all the people present were shocked. Was it a horrible old monster who took action? No one knew when a figure appeared in the field. It was an old man, thin and thin, with eyes like a pair of deep black holes, surging with mysterious patterns of the Great Way. Standing there casually, there was no shocking momentum, but everyone felt a stinging pain in their eyes. They didn't dare to look directly at him, as if he was not an old man, but a big sun hanging high above the ninth heaven, illuminating the mountains and rivers with immeasurable brilliance. Zhao Zhanya's face suddenly became ugly, and a touch of fear appeared between his eyebrows. It seemed that he didn't expect that the old man would be alarmed and come here today. At this time, many big shots in the field stood up in unison and saluted, "Pay respects to the dean." Their voices surged and resounded in the field. At this time, everyone was shocked and hurriedly stood up, trembling. Dean. It was the dean of Green Deer School who hadn't appeared for many years. He was definitely the most unfathomable old monster in the empire. It was said that as early as 1,000 years ago, he had the power of a life-death realm challenger. He was mysterious and terrible. However, he hadn't appeared for many years, and everyone thought that he had been wandering around and had long ignored the affairs of the world. Who would have thought that on this day, this old man would appear once again? Lin Sun was also shocked, but he had seen the old man once, so he was not too surprised by his appearance today. Taking advantage of this opportunity, he quickly put away the long spear and jumped down from the 9th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Since the dean was here, Lin Sun was not worried about any accidents today. "I have seen everything that has happened today. At this moment, I only wish to ask everyone, where is this place? The dean's voice was still indifferent, but the meaning of his words made all the big shots present feel a chill in their hearts, realizing that the situation was a little serious. No one dared to answer because they all knew the answer. You tell me. The old man looked at Zhao Zhanya. In an instant, Zhao Zhanya's face turned pale and his body stiffened. Even if he was a powerful figure in the imperial family, he had no confidence to confront the old man opposite him. Please punish me, Dean. Zhao Zhanya was decisive and immediately bowed his head to admit his mistake. Everyone gasped. Zhao Zhanya, who had a high status, was now acting like a junior and didn't even dare to defend himself, which made the dean's power even more terrifying. From now on, you are not allowed to step into Green Deer School. After a moment of silence, the dean directly deprived Zhao Zhanya of his position as the vice dean of Martial Courtyard and expelled him from the school. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow. If it was spread out, Zhao Zhanya's reputation would be affected. But he didn't dare to refute at all. Instead, he bowed his head to accept his punishment as if relieved of a heavy burden. From beginning to end, he didn't show any dissatisfaction or resentment. This made everyone's heart tumble again. The dean's power was too strong. In Green Deer School, he was the only one. At this time, Chu Shanhe, Zhuofu Guang, Qin Baoji and others had already realized that something was wrong. They were stiff all over as if sitting on pins and needles. They all knew that the dean was obviously here to stand up for Lin Sun. Chapter 510. Zhao Zhanya wanted to seize the treasure made by Lin Sun, but he was suppressed by the dean. Even his position as vice dean of Martial School was deprived, which shocked everyone present. Everyone realized that the dean must show up this time to protect Lin Sun. This made Ning Meng and Sure Yu feel very happy. Even Blood King Ning Bugue couldn't help but be moved. He secretly sighed that Lin Sun was so lucky to be taken care of by the dean, which was not a treatment that everyone could enjoy. Those big shots who had targeted Lin Sun before were all stiff as if there was a thorn in their backs, and their faces were cloudy. They didn't expect that Lin Sun could attract the attention of the dean, and he even expelled Zhao Zhanya without hesitation. This was a kind of attitude, indicating that they would stand up for Lin Sun and couldn't tolerate Lin Sun being suppressed. Since all of you are here, I'm also curious what Lin Sun did to make you come all the way to Green Deer School to denounce him. The dean spoke again, making the atmosphere more and more oppressive. Dean, this lad once forced Marquis Ling Tian to kneel in public, which desecrated the dignity of the royal family. How can we tolerate such a big crime? Finally, an important figure mustered up his courage and took a deep breath before speaking. This lad once killed people of Zhuo family and imprisoned Zhuoyang, a descendant of Zhuo family. If we don't punish him severely, we won't agree. Zhuofu Guang said in a low voice. Many people of Qin family have been killed by him. A few days ago, he forced Qi Yu, a direct descendant of Qi family, to kneel. He has done a lot of evil deeds and is rampant. This lad is extremely bold. If we don't teach him a lesson, he will become a big trouble in the future. Many people spoke. They were all big shots from Qin family, Qi family, Zhuo family and other top aristocratic families. Naturally, they were unwilling to give up. The hearts of everyone present trembled when they heard these criticisms. These great figures represented numerous enormous powers. Audacious? Are you talking about Lin Sun or yourselves? The dean said, glancing at everyone. Wherever his eyes passed, no one dared to look at him. Senior, what are you? Someone braced himself and asked. It's very simple. Since you keep saying that you want to settle old scores, why don't we settle it today? Let's see who's the audacious one. The dean's voice was indifferent, yet it was filled with an extraordinary dignified aura. It was like the sound of the Tao piercing into the ears of everyone, and it shook the souls of everyone to the point their vital blood roiled and their souls palpitated. The surroundings were deathly silent. The headmaster's prestige was immeasurable, and even the current emperor didn't dare to offend him. Who would dare to challenge the headmaster at this time? Since you think Lin Sun is innocent, we have nothing to say. Goodbye. Zhuo Fuguang spoke indifferently, and his voice carried a wisp of resentment. Humph! The dean let out a cold snort, and Zhuo Fuguang's body instantly stiffened. He was intimidated on the spot, and he didn't dare to make another move. Let me ask you again, what crime did Lin Sun commit? As long as you can give me a solid reason, I will immediately ignore this matter and let your Zhuo family deal with Lin Sun, the dean said calmly. Zhuo Fuguang's face changed slightly. He gritted his teeth and said, "He killed people of Zhuo family a few days ago. Many people here know about it. Now Zhuo Yang, the descendant of Zhuo family, is detained on heart-cleansing peak of Lin family. Isn't this a crime?" "How dare you?" the dean scolded. "If it weren't for your Zhuo family and Qin family to invade heart-cleansing peak, how could such a thing happen? You only have yourselves to blame for everything." These words made Lin Sun realize that the dean had already known everything. This touched him a little. He knew that the old man had begun to pay attention to him. Zhuo Fuguang's face became embarrassed. When he was about to say something, the dean waved his hand and said, "Go away. Don't force me to go to your Zhuo family in person." The dean's words were like thunder, which made Zhuo Fuguang's face change greatly. Finally, he knew that the dean wanted to protect Lin Sun at all costs. Finally, Zhuo Fuguang turned away without saying a word. He was a dignified marquis of 100 battles, who had killed countless enemies on the battlefield. But now he dared not say anything at all. He could only endure it and leave, which made many big shots feel cold in their hearts. "I have nothing to say. Goodbye." Qin Baoji turned away with a gloomy face. Seeing this, Lin Sun was a little unwilling. But he also knew that it was impossible for the dean to suppress Zhuo Fuguang and Qin Baoji, no matter how much he cared for him. At this point, all the big shots present were silent. No one mentioned the grievances with Lin Sun. "I heard that Lin Sun had a grudge against Hua family. I'm willing to resolve it. Is there any room for negotiation?" The dean looked at a big shot of Hua family. It was a middle-aged man with a long beard. His name was Hua Qinqi, and he immediately said, "Dean, please understand. There is indeed some conflict, but it is just a small quarrel between the younger generation. Since Senior has spoken, this matter should be settled." He was neither humble nor arrogant, but he wisely expressed the attitude of Hua family. He didn't want to offend the dean because of Lin Sun. "What do you think?" the dean asked Lin Sun. Lin Sun had already known that the dean was helping him. How could he not know what was good for him? He said, "It's indeed a small conflict. I don't mean to be hostile to Hua family from beginning to end." "Good." The dean nodded and looked at Hua Qinqi. "Go back and tell your old ancestor that he can come to the school to discuss Taoism with me when he's free." Hua Qingqi's face lit up. If he was a little unwilling before, he was absolutely overjoyed now. This was an invitation from the dean. If the old ancestor of Hua family knew about it, he would definitely be moved and wouldn't refuse this kindness. Seeing this, many people couldn't help but envy Lin Sun. What a lucky guy! Which young man could get the dean's protection and favor like him? This guy is too spoiled. Ning Meng couldn't help being stunned. If you can refine a spiritual armor born from thunder test at the age of 16, you can enjoy the same treatment. "Sure," you said faintly. "Forget it. I'm not that abnormal." Ning Meng shook his head. The dean continued, looking at a big shot of Song family. Did Lin Sun have a conflict with some juniors of Song family? The big shot of Song family had already seen everything that happened just now. Hearing the dean's words, he immediately said, "I'm sorry. It's just a fight between the young generation. It's nothing." Strictly speaking, Song Zhe and Song Chonghe of Song family were both defeated by Lin Sun, and they were at fault first. This big shot of Song family couldn't go deep into it, otherwise, he would only lose face. In this case, why don't I be a witness and turn hostility into friendship? The dean looked at Lin Sun. Whatever you say, senior. Lin Sun nodded. For him, neither Song family nor Hua family had any deep hatred with him. It would be better if some conflicts could be resolved. Seeing this, everyone sighed with emotion again. As soon as the dean appeared, he helped Lin Sun clear some obstacles. It could be seen how much importance he attached to Lin Sun. From today on, who dared to offend Lin Sun rashly with the relationship of the dean? Senior, please forgive us. Qi family has a deep hatred with Lin Sun. It's destined that we can't settle it peacefully. Goodbye. Before the dean spoke again, a big shot of Qi family had already opened his mouth, which surprised people. Perhaps only Qi family, a superior aristocratic force, dared to say so. Seeing this, the dean was not annoyed. He said lightly, "In this case, take care of yourself." Lin Sun also breathed a sigh of relief. To be honest, he didn't intend to resolve the conflict with Qi family at all. Before he arrived at the Forbidden City for the first time, he was besieged by Qi family many times along the way. He had already formed a deep hatred with Qi family. It was impossible for him to bury the hatchet. Qi family has the same attitude. However, Qi family will not bully a junior. The affairs of the younger generation will be solved by the younger generation. On the other side, a big shot of Qi family said. The dean nodded, okay. Lin Sun couldn't help sneering when he thought of Qi Yu, who was forced to kneel down by him. If it was a duel between the younger generation, he was not afraid at all. At this point, Zhao Zhanya was expelled, the Zhua and Qin families left with suppressed anger, the hatred between Hua family and Song family and Lin Sun was over, the Qi family showed that they would not give up, and the Qi family made a decision to compete with the younger generation. It could be said that the dean's action helped Lin Sun resolve a lot of disputes and let Lin Sun know who the real hostile force was. Don't look at me. I can't make any decision on behalf of the imperial family. I'm here to watch the fun. When he noticed that the dean was looking at him, Zhao Jiuxiao, Lord of Sea Garrison, immediately said aloud. He always wanted to be a bystander, and the attitude he expressed at the moment was indeed so. But soon, he changed the thread of conversation and said with a smile, "Of course, I'm very happy to see such a young spiritual tattoo master grow up." Everyone was stunned and felt the mystery in his words. Even if he couldn't get the understanding of all the imperial family, at least Lin Sun had won the favor and recognition of Zhao Jiuxiao, Lord of Sea Garrison. Among the people present, only Chu Shanhe felt extremely bitter in his heart. Standing there, he felt uncomfortable and anxious. He wanted to run away immediately because his allies had fallen apart one after another and were suppressed by the dean. At this moment, Chu Shanhe inadvertently noticed that Lin Sun, who was not far away, suddenly looked at him with a cold smile. This made Chu Shanhe's heart thump, and he realized that something was wrong. Lin Sun said in a deep voice, "Senior, I need you to uphold justice for me." "What's the matter?" asked the dean. Lin Sun looked at Chu Shanhe, which made the latter feel cold all over, stiff on his face, and scared in his heart. He vaguely realized what Lin Sun wanted to do. "When I was forging this time, the azure cauldron that I used was tampered with in advance, and I almost failed on the verge of success. I hope that Senior can investigate clearly and find out who is behind the scenes and give me justice." As soon as these words came out, Chu Shanhe's head buzzed as if he had been struck by lightning. He seemed to have lost his soul. Sure enough, the matter was exposed. Chapter 511. Someone had secretly sabotaged Lin Sun's previous refining action. Hearing this, all the people present were stunned and couldn't believe their ears. Who had such a deep hatred against Lin Sun that he would do this? This was too despicable. Is it true? Shin Tuo's face was livid, and he almost bit his teeth to pieces. It was lawless that someone dared to do this in the spiritual tattoo yard. The cyan cauldron is on the 9th floor of the spiritual tower. If you don't believe me, you can go there and have a look. Lin Sun glanced at Chu Shanhe coldly. It's you. Shen Tuo immediately reacted and asked sternly. How dare you? Don't slander me without any proof. Chu Shanhe shouted loudly while forcefully calming himself down. He would absolutely not admit this. Otherwise, not only would he lose his reputation today, he might even suffer an extremely cruel punishment. You can't prove it? Oh, Chu Shanhe, you dare to do it but dare not admit it? If you hadn't secretly sabotaged the cyan cauldron and convinced me that I would fail this time, how dare you and others jump out to suppress me on the first day of my refining? Lin Sun sneered. Everyone couldn't help being surprised and looked at Chu Shanhe. Indeed, as early as the first day of Lin Sun's refining, Chu Shanhe's performance was too abnormal. It seemed that they had expected that Lin Sun would fail this time. They were aggressive and extremely confident. At that time, they all wondered why Chu Shanhe and others dared to be so fearless when they had just started refining and were not sure whether they would fail or not. Whoever thought that there was a reason for this? If what Lin Sun said was true, Chu Shanhe was too despicable. As the deputy dean of the spiritual tattoo yard, it was shameless of him to sabotage a junior's refining action. No wonder this old guy was so arrogant before. It turns out that he had secretly done something. Ning Meng was furious. Sure, you and others also looked angry. Chu Shanhe's action almost killed Lin Sun. How could they not be angry? If Lin Sun failed this time, the consequences would be unimaginable. Lin Sun, if I had done something to it, how could you refine the armor with spiritual tattoos smoothly? Chu Shanhe's face was ashen as he spoke angrily. That's not enough to prove your innocence. The only reason I succeeded was because I resolved the crisis in time. Lin Sun looked cold. But how dare you prove that I did it? Chu Shanhe's face darkened. He insisted that Lin Sun had no evidence at all, so he dared to be so persistent. Forget it, there's no need to argue anymore. I'll go check and find out. At this moment, the dean, who had been watching coldly from the sidelines, suddenly spoke. As he spoke, his figure flashed, and he swiftly flashed into the nearby 9th level of the spiritual refinement pagoda. Obviously, the dean was infuriated and wanted to personally investigate the truth and drag out the mastermind in the dark. After all, this matter was too abominable. In Green Deer School, someone dared to harm a young spiritual tattoo master who could refine a spiritual tattoo armor. This was a heinous crime. No one knew what method the headmaster would use to investigate the truth, but everyone had a feeling that as long as the headmaster personally took action, he would definitely get to the bottom of the matter. Chu Shanhe was also frightened and uneasy to the extreme. He thought that he had done it flawlessly without leaving any clues at all. But when he saw the headmaster personally take action, he felt an indescribable pressure and was almost unable to hold on. As time went by, he was stiff all over, nervous and frightened to the extreme. Like a prisoner about to be judged, he was in a bad mood. Humph, when the headmaster finds out who the mastermind is, he must be severely punished no matter what his identity is, Shen Tuo said coldly. He couldn't help but be afraid when he thought about it. If Lin Sun failed this time because of someone else's frame-up, it was destined to be an unpredictable tragedy. Yes, it's not a pity for such a despicable and shameless person to be cut into pieces or burned to ashes. Ning Meng shouted. Everyone had seen that Chu Shanhe had become the biggest suspect in the field, and it was up to the headmaster to find out the truth in the end. It didn't take long for the headmaster to reappear. He looked calm and emotionless, so people didn't know whether he had found any clues just now. Even Lin Sun was a little nervous. To be honest, he didn't have enough evidence to prove that it was Chu Shanhe who did it. If the headmaster didn't find out, there was no doubt that Chu Shanhe had escaped a disaster, which was unacceptable to Lin. He really hated this old guy. From the first time he entered the yard of spiritual tattoos, Chu Shanha had deliberately made things difficult for him. Now, Chu Shanha united with other old guys to harm him. If he didn't teach this guy an unforgettable lesson this time, Lin Sun couldn't swallow it at all. The atmosphere was silent, and all eyes fell on the headmaster. The headmaster looked at Chu Shanha. At that moment, Chu Shanha trembled imperceptibly and his face was stiff. "Follow me." The headmaster didn't say much and turned away. Chu Shanha's face changed for a while. Finally, he gritted his teeth and followed the headmaster. Soon, he disappeared in the field. What's wrong? Is he the mastermind? It should be him. The headmaster called him away just to save him some face. After all, this is a scandal. If it is spread out, it will also have an impact on the reputation of Green Deer School. If that's the case, then Chu Shanha is completely finished. There was a lot of discussion in the field. Lin Sun also frowned. But no matter what, he believed that the headmaster would definitely give him a satisfactory answer. "Congratulations, my young friend, for successfully refining a piece of spiritual tattoo armor. My young friend, may I ask whether that piece of spiritual tattoo armor will be sold? Little brother Lin Sun, can you show us the wonderful power of that spear again?" As soon as the headmaster left, many big shots rushed forward, stared at Lin Sun eagerly and spoke one after another. As early as before, they were tempted and coveted the long spear which survived the thunder test. Now that the headmaster had just left, they couldn't help it anymore. Spiritual tattoo armor. One piece of spiritual tattoo armor could change the pattern of a big force. Who didn't want to have it? Originally, Ning Meng and Sure you were going to rush up, but when they saw Lin Sun surrounded by a group of old men, they were dumbfounded. "Everyone, please listen to me." Lin Sun stopped all kinds of voices and said, 10 days later, I will hold a press conference about this piece of spiritual tattoo armor in Keystone business. At that time, I will let you know the magic of this treasure clearly." In the distance, Sure Yu's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard this. He knew that Lin Sun did this with the intention of returning a favor. After all, even his father, Fortune God Sure, showed up today to support Lin Sun. Humph, this guy is eccentric. Why does he always think about Keystone business? Why doesn't he think about me? Ning Meng muttered discontentedly. Crack. Iron Blood King slapped Ning Meng on the forehead and scolded him with a smile. Bastard, with Lin Sun here in the future, do you still worry about the lack of a suitable spiritual tattoo armor? Fortune Godsure, Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo next to him also laughed. They were pulled here to support Lin Sun, so they didn't know much about Lin Sun. However, after seeing what happened just now, they couldn't help but feel satisfied. They felt that Lin Sun, a rare talent worthy of their attention and care, was indeed a rare talent. My young friend Lin Sun, do you intend to sell this treasure on the day of the press conference? A big shot asked eagerly. I won't sell this treasure. Lin Sun answered without hesitation, which disappointed many people. But Lin Sun's next words made them excited again. However, if you can find a way to solve the problem of devil tribulation powder, I promise to refine a piece of spiritual tattoo armor for you. The whole audience was shocked. Many big shots began to think that they would try their best to find a solution to devil tribulation powder after they left. Of course, on the day of the press conference, I will also announce some matters about refining the spiritual tattoo armor. Please pay more attention to it. As soon as Lin Sun's words came out, the audience responded eagerly. Many people had secretly decided to build a good relationship with Lin Sun in any case. Such a young spiritual tattoo master who could refine a piece of spiritual tattoo armor was destined to have limitless achievements in the future. It took a long time for the crowd to disperse. Lin Sun was just about to breathe a sigh of relief when he saw Shin Tua, Yu Beidu, Qing Jing and other spiritual tattoo masters gathering here with a fanatical look. Obviously, they were going to ask about refining the spiritual tattoo armor. Lin Sun hurriedly said, "Everyone, let me take a break. I'm so tired these days in order to refine the spiritual tattoo armor. My body can't hold it anymore." Shin Tuo and others felt a little embarrassed and quickly nodded in agreement. They all said that they would teach Lin Sun when he was free. Lin Sun agreed readily. "Have a good rest, little guy. I'll ask Shiryu to pick you up and go to Keystone business in a few days. I'm also looking forward to the surprises at the press conference." Fortune God sure laughed and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. Then he left with Ning Bugue, Yi Qingtian and Gong Bupo. Lin Sun breathed a long sigh of relief until he returned to the teacher's dormitory where he lived. There was a touch of unconcealable exhaustion between his eyebrows. He was really too tired and exhausted. At this moment, as soon as he relaxed, he directly fell asleep on the bed. At the same time, there was an uproar in the outside world, which shocked the Forbidden City. Lin Sun successfully refined a piece of spiritual tattoo armor today. The news swept across like a storm. It flew to every area of the Forbidden City as if it had wings, shocking every practitioner's mind. No one expected that Lin Sun, who was looked down upon by most people, actually succeeded in this step. All kinds of discussions spread out. All the details about what happened in front of the spiritual refining tower were also dug out and became the hottest topic of discussion. Lin Sun. This name, like magic, once again shocked the Forbidden City and attracted the attention of countless people.